Wind off the emerald forest comes through the window first, and then me. The little chimes on the sill knock against each other in that thin morning way, and I sit up on the plank crate bed, press my palm flat to the linen, feel the straw shift under the coarse fabric, and try to figure out who I actually am. Two sets of memories are layered on top of each other inside my skull. A half-broke young hunter from a village I have never seen, and a freshly graduated college kid from a world with traffic lights and instant noodles, and they keep handing the controls back and forth. Who am I? Where am I? Is any of this real? I get up to test it. I cross to the window and look out on a street that does not belong to any city I ever lived in. Morning mist still hanging low over the sandstone road. Merchant caravans grinding by. Women setting clay pots out onto the shelves under the awnings of their shops. A blacksmith's apprentice swinging the door open and hanging up the open sign. The whole scene is telling me, very politely and very clearly, that I have been dropped into a brand new world. So that is what we are doing today, apparently. If the dead boy's memories in my head can be trusted, this world runs on magic. Goblins and kobolds and mud monsters are the kind of thing a farmer might run into walking home. Dragons and devils are real enough to ruin entire kingdoms. There are professionals, what people here call character classes, men and women who have learned to channel magic and combat skills, mages and warlocks and warriors and druids and rangers. None of this is bard stories. All of it is the local weather. My heart, which was already a little dim, picks up speed. Ordinary people do not just walk into a class in this world, but I did not arrive empty-handed. My golden finger came with me. A book that only exists inside my mind, and the words on its title page are the Adventurer's Handbook. I focus on it the way you focus on a memory, and 3 sections unfold themselves. The attribute panel, the monster compendium, and the map. The fact that this thing exists at all settles something in my chest that has been rattling since I woke up. The attribute panel shows my name, Gauss. Strength 5, the line that covers physical strength and carrying capacity and explosive output. Agility 5, flexibility and dynamic coordination. Constitution 5, stamina and metabolism and how well a body knits itself back together. Intelligence 6, memory and thinking and mental power. Perception 5, senses and intuition and judgment. Charm 5, temperament and bearing. Skills, none. Average across the board except for 1 extra point in intelligence, probably a parting gift from the transmigration itself. I am, in other words, a perfectly forgettable human being with a slightly better than average brain. Comforting. I turn the page in my head to the monster compendium. It splits along threat tiers: ordinary, dangerous, elite, extraordinary, legendary, and a sealed tier at the end that just shows 2 question marks. The only section I can actually browse is ordinary, and even there every icon is faint, and tapping one only pulls up a message telling me the target has not yet been killed, so the corresponding entry cannot light up. A second prompt notes that the compendium tracks both single species totals and total monsters killed, and that each milestone hands out a reward. The path forward is, in fact, generous of it, not subtle. Kill things, fill the book, collect the prizes. The last tab is the map. I think at it, and a layout drops into my mind, the simplified icon of a stone house at the dead center, my own location. A line of text invites me to name the building, and I murmur Sophia's Inn inside my head, and the icon labels itself. Almost nothing else has been lit up, just the strip of street outside my door, and everything beyond is shrouded in fog. The handbook treats exploration the way any sensible game would. You walk it, you see it. I have not even left my room. I close the book in my head, pack my belongings, and head downstairs to start the day on the only thing my budget allows: breakfast. The first floor is dining area and front desk in one room. A handful of round wooden tables, all of them empty at this hour. I greet Sophia and ask her for breakfast, and add the thank you because my previous life trained me into manners that have not yet died. Sophia's Inn is, by map definition, an inn, but in practice it is closer to one of those converted youth hostels I used to know. Somebody's old house turned into beds for the people without fixed addresses, the freelancers and the wanderers. A single room runs 2 copper coins a day, or 30 copper coins on the monthly discount, which is cheap by tavern standards. Breakfast is 1 copper coin a serving, lunch and dinner 2 each, which gets you fed, not fed well. Black bread, homemade pickles, wild vegetable soup, stewed beans, oatmeal. Meat, obviously, is somebody else's life. A middle-aged blonde woman comes out from behind the counter and answers me cheerfully, calling me Little Gauss, asking if I overslept. I tell her honestly that I could not sleep last night, that my catch has been thinning out, while I drop into a chair at one of the empty tables. She tells me I still need to rest. She brings out a tray a few minutes later with today's breakfast. Black bread already sliced and looking very hard. A bowl of stewed vegetable soup steaming next to it. Once she has gone back into the kitchen, I pick up a slice and tap it against the wooden plate, and the sound it makes is the sound of 2 pieces of wood meeting. I hold the thing up to the light. There are actual splinters in it. Forget it. We do this the way the dead boy did it. I drop the slab into the soup, wait for the heat to soften it, scoop a spoonful, and put it in my mouth. The texture going down my throat is sticky and faintly nauseating, the kind of food that scratches on its way through, and even braced for it I am a little wounded. My previous life was overstocked supermarkets and 3 actual meals a day, even on a regular salary, and this is the cheapest possible sustenance for the lower class of a fantasy world. I finish it anyway, numb to the chewing by the end, and when Sophia calls out to be careful on the way I wave and step out into my first real morning on the wrong side of the universe. The sun has climbed to the peaks of the distant mountains. The first light spills across the gray stone rooftops of Grey Rock Town, and the frontier town wakes up properly against the edge of the Emerald Forest. Merchants haul goods along the streets. Small groups of what look like adventurers stride through, and most of the rest are freelancers like the kid I am wearing. The original Gauss was a half-broke hunter, dagger and traps and a circuit through the outermost edge of the forest, picking wild rabbits and pheasants for 20 copper coins a head when he was lucky, because meat is expensive to a commoner here. Some days he caught 3 rabbits and earned 50 to 60 copper coins. Some weeks he caught nothing at all, 4 or 5 days strung together, and only the side gleanings, wild vegetables, and fruit and medicinal herbs on the way out of the forest kept him from coming home empty-handed. Add the odd job hauling village produce to a town stall, and the kid made a living. Not a good one. He had been out on his own for a year, and on inherited trapcraft and stubborn thrift he had managed to put away 3 silver coins and 65 copper coins. The plan was a house in Grey Rock Town, the cheapest of which start at 90 silver coins, before the property taxes set in and keep on bleeding you forever. By the dead boy's own math, he was roughly 30 years of grinding away from his front door. Sorry, kid. The money you broke your back saving for a house is the money I am about to spend killing my first monster. I am not hunting today. I am going to put a goblin in the ground and turn the lights on inside the monster compendium and see what comes out the other end. Climbing out of the freelancer cellar starts with the adventurer's handbook and nothing else. I leave with the determination of a man who is about to do something stupid, and within an hour of wandering Grey Rock Town I realize the stupid is going to be harder than I thought. The ideal target for a 5-stat ordinary person would be a low-tier monster. Alone. Somewhere close to home. Close is the part that does not exist. The town defense force sweeps the area on a regular schedule, and adventurers churn the surrounding country constantly, and the result is that the few kilometers around Grey Rock Town are scrubbed clean of anything I could actually pick a fight with. To kill anything I have to leave the immediate jurisdiction and try the outermost fringes of the Emerald Forest. Before I go, I burn through most of my savings on what the dead boy never bought. Equipment. Going at a monster with my bare hands, even a low-tier one, even one that ordinary people can handle, is the kind of thing you do once. I have one life. Cautious is the only setting. I work the busiest shops in town. 80 copper coins for a well-maintained second-hand dagger. 1 silver coin for a set of cloth armor, layered cloth with cotton lining, surprisingly tough under the fingers, enough to soak up a few hits. 20 copper coins for a dose of paralyzing poison from the herbalist, homemade, painted onto the blade and let it dry, and according to the shop apprentice anything I cut afterwards goes slow for a while. 40 copper coins for a topical herbal paste, the kind you smear on a wound to slow the bleeding. 30 copper coins for the medical basics, linen bandages, wooden splints, the rest of it. 2 silver coins and 70 copper coins total. My pocket comes out the other side holding 95 copper coins. I refuse to spend the rest. If the adventure goes sideways, I still want enough to keep myself off the street, fed and roofed for a while. Peace of mind buys a lot of bad decisions you do not have to make. The dagger fits the budget and the man. The original was trained on a dagger from boyhood. Prep work and skinning and clearing brush and self-defense, and his muscle memory still drives my arm. Long weapons would hit harder, sure, but a second-hand sword runs double-digit silver coins and I had never held one. Knowing your weapon matters more than the size of the blade in your hand. Armor is even worse. Decent leather starts at 10 silver coins, metal is somebody else's life entirely. Before I leave town, I sit down at the Nightingale Tavern at the edge of Grey Rock and pay 30 copper coins for a real lunch. Pickled fish in a small dish, careful pickles, a few pieces of stewed tender meat, a bowl of noodles. The portions are small, but it is meat, and a body that has been running on black bread for a year needs the fat. I am still mourning the copper coins on the way out. Then I burp once and feel my muscles wake up and decide it was worth it. Before a fight, you eat. The body is the engine. Stretching, I pull the cloth armor on over my shirt, sling the supply satchel across my body, tuck the cloth-wrapped dagger into my belt, and walk out the town gate. The country outside Grey Rock Town opens up huge, hard, dry yellow road under my boots, an endless wilderness on either side, blue sky over the top. For town safety, the woods near Grey Rock were leveled years ago and replaced with farmland and grassland with clean sightlines, partly so the guard can spot anomalies coming out of the Emerald Forest, and partly because dense forest favors monsters and disfavors humans in a fight. Trade is fair, the trees lose. I am not the only one walking. Lone hunters trudge along, low-level adventurer teams of 3 or 4, and once or twice I see a real professional. You do not need to be told. The full-plate armor, the wealth coming off it, the sheer ease of carrying that weight at speed, the aura that pushes strangers back without a word. I look down at my own thin frame, the disheveled cloth armor, the wrapped-up dagger, and the equipment I spent most of my savings on. Suddenly looks like a joke. If I had to fight one of them, I would come apart in a single punch. I can picture it. I charge, dagger hacking off the rock plate armor without leaving a scratch, and a backhand sends me 2 or 3 meters into the dirt with no way back up. If I were the man in the full plate, killing one ordinary goblin to light up the codex would be easier than kicking a stray dog. A pack of them would not even slow him down. Then I laugh at myself, because the frog in the well jealousy is unbecoming. Anyone who has actually become a professional is not setting goblins as their adventure goal. The whole reason I am out here is the handbook. 1 kill flips the codex on. After that, we stop being weak. The road eats a long time. I pass it the way the dead boy passed it, watching the other travelers, talking myself up. A couple of teams ask if I want in. Several of them, actually. My kit must look just barely presentable enough by the standard of the bottom-tier adventurers to be worth recruiting. I refuse all of them. It is not arrogance, my combat strength is probably right in their neighborhood, and moving together would mean watching each other's backs. The problem is that the original Gauss has always worked alone, and I do not know any of these strangers. And joining a team means fighting both the monster in front of me and whatever decision the people behind me make. Better to walk in alone, decide my own pace, pick my own target, retreat when I want. When the strength is not there, cowardice is a tactic. A team strips that option off the table. The emerald forest swallows the sound of the road as I step under the canopy. The light shrinks. Birds I cannot identify call out somewhere overhead, the noise pressing into my ears, and the air goes a few degrees colder. I pull the dagger and hold my breath without meaning to. The forest looks the way it makes you feel. A long, dark, eerie throat ready to swallow whatever walks into it. The lush, dense emerald forest barely lets sunlight through, and a chill runs the length of my spine, the kind of chill that does not let up. Compared with the new low-level adventurers who come in here for the first time and immediately get lost, I am at a small natural advantage. The original Gauss made his living on the outer rim of this forest. He knew several hunting grounds and had left markers at every one of them, the kind of trail signs you carve into oak bark to find your way back. On top of that, the Adventurer's Handbook lights up any ground my feet have already crossed. So the first and quietest killer of new adventurers, the simple fact of getting lost in an infinite tangle of identical trees, is not going to take me out today. The original used to find human skeletons sometimes on his rounds. Gear stripped, clothes gone, scavenged by the monsters who actually live here. If it were not for those monsters, scavenging the dead adventurers alone could have bought him a house. I move at a steady pace, leaning on the original's memory and the carved markers on the oak trunks, until I reach a quiet hunting ground I picked specifically for what was around it. There are goblins in the area. Not too many. I am here on purpose. About a month back, the kid had not caught anything for days, so he opened this ground up, set traps, made a small living off it. Then, one early morning, the sky just turning gray and the forest fog still thick, he came out to check his traps and found blood on the ground where the prey had been taken before he got there. Someone had beaten him to the catch. Goblin. He sized the prints fast. Child-sized footprints. No shoes. Very fresh because rain the previous day had pressed them into the soil. No barefoot child was wandering this deep into the emerald forest, and the print size matched a common goblin almost exactly. He abandoned the ground out of caution and never came back. Until now. I refocus and run the warning to myself out loud in my head. Even if the prints back then were all from one goblin, that does not mean only one goblin works this area. I run what I know about them. Pointed ears, dark green skin, murky eyes, thin limbs. Never very strong, always male, always short. Gregarious. They prefer meat, occasionally pick berries, and on a brain incapable of productive labor and a bloodline full of mean-spirited little quirks. They survive by robbery and plunder from first breath to last. They steal food. They steal women. They cannot reproduce within their own tribe, so they raid for it. And the species they raid most is humans, because human builds match theirs. Villages know this story by heart. They take food, tools, and women, and they leave a long, dirty trail behind them. Combat-wise, an ordinary goblin is about what you would guess. Weak in a one-on-one. Beatable by a single farmer with a decent weapon. They make up for it with numbers. They ambush. They surround. If their numbers grow, they grow teeth, and a village can get eaten. They breed like rats, multiple young to a litter, near total survival rate, a year from squealing infant to sexually mature adult, and once mature they go right back to raiding for the next round. The only good ending for the species is the species being extinct. Goblin, you are my first target. Either the dead boy nor the version of me that grew up with a normal modern education feels anything resembling sympathy for a creature like this. Pep talk done. Guard back up. The goblins in memory are weak, but I have never killed one in person, and practice makes the perfect knife. Life is singular, mine and the goblins both, and anything alive fights to keep being alive on instinct. This is real. Not a game, not an adventure. I take a breath. I untie the satchel and bury it under a tree with a thick mat of fallen leaves, easy to find again, hidden from a passing eye. The dagger is already painted in the paralyzing poison. I picked a window seat for lunch on purpose, in direct sun, to let the herbal coat dry and harden onto the metal. and now the silver-white blade has an eerie green sheen to it. I am not expecting much out of cheap poison. 20 copper coins of slow is 20 copper coins of slow, not an instant freeze. The real fight is the dagger itself. I close my hand on the handle and let the dead boy's muscle memory walk in. After a few seconds, my grip feels right. The angles feel right. I crouch and start working the ground, brushing leaves aside, looking for tracks. Hunter habit. Living things leave traces, especially low-intelligence things that do not bother to cover them. Footprints, fur, scat, food scraps, drag marks. The forest is loud with information once you know what to look for. Found it. A clear footprint in the dirt. Fresh, maybe within the last 2 days. The goblin is still working this ground. Probably the kid's stolen catch made enough of an impression that it keeps swinging through to see if anything has been laid out for it again. I follow the prints carefully, more prints and scat showing up the deeper I go, and the trail leads me away from the original hunting ground to a small pond not far off. I push the bushes aside and look at my target. A green-skinned little monster is sitting easy on a knee-high rock, sharpening a stone spear on the surface, picking at its foot and humming to itself. There you are. I hold my breath and let the eyes in the bushes get a long look. To me, this is not just a goblin. This is the gate of my class. I do not move yet. First I listen. I look around. Other than the rock the goblin is sitting on, the pond clearing is open ground with no cover, ideal for a head-on fight and lousy for a clean approach. The moment I leave the bushes, there are about 10 meters of exposed grass between me and the target, and 10 meters is short for a sentence and long for a charge. If I sprint and make noise, it will react in time. I need to circle around, come at it from behind, sneak in quietly, and put the dagger through before it knows I am there. Catching it while it is grinding its weapon is the right window, and the right window inside that is when its hands are not yet on the spear. Ready against unready, armed against unarmed, the physical advantage on my side, and the fight should be a one-way street. Plan locked. I crouch and slip sideways through the brush as quietly as feet allow, settling in directly behind the goblin. Once I am in position, I clamp down on the dagger handle. My hand starts shaking. Nerves or excitement, take your pick, and the sweat on my palm only makes me grip the rough handle harder. I swallow. The little green creature on the rock still has its back to me, picking its foot, humming, grinding the stone spear with the kind of relaxation of a thing that has never been hunted in its life. In a moment, the dagger in my hand is going to end its life. I close my eyes and take one more breath. In my previous life, I never actively killed anything bigger than a stepped-on ant. I'm about to take a living being apart, and the fact that goblins look vaguely human makes it heavier than I want it to be. It deserves to die. Make no mistake about that. The original's childhood comes up on its own, triggered by the sight in front of me. More than a dozen goblins attacked the village he lived in when he was small. The adults grouped up with pitchforks and sickles and drove them off. But a girl a few years older than him, his neighbor, was carried off and never came back. I do not need to spell out what happened to her. Same kind of tragedy has played out for thousands of years across this land. I open my eyes again, and any hesitation that was in them is gone. I jam my right thumbnail hard against the knuckle of my index finger, and the sting takes the tremor out of my hand. The grip steadies. I crawl out of the bushes on hands and feet near flat, breathing held. Outside of the chirping of birds and the buzz of insects, the forest is silent. The wind has gone still. The pond does not have a ripple in it. I stop about 3 meters from the goblin, close enough to see the coarse hair in the folds of its green skin and the small twitch of its muscles as it breathes. I rise slowly, the way a kid plays red light, green light in the dark, letting the blood move properly through my legs again. When my body is no longer locked up, I take one more breath, and I move. A big stride first. My toes drive against the ground and the recoil shoves me forward. 3 steps in 2, and I am on the rock. The goblin, deep in the grind of its spear, jerks at the sudden noise, twitches, and grabs for the stone spear by instinct. I do not give it the chance. My right boot stamps down hard onto the wooden handle of the spear, full weight on it, its fingers close on air. It reaches again. I kick the spear away. Before it can sit up, I drop on it, left hand on the back of its skull, driving its head into the rock surface, left knee on its back to pin it under my weight. The shriek that comes out of it is sharp and ugly, choked, muffled, but burning loud, and it thrashes anyway. The fangs that close are inches from my arm. The foul saliva spraying makes my eyes narrow on reflex. Even pinned face down on stone, it still rips out an unbelievable will to live. Slender arms swinging back at an unnatural angle to claw my forearm with gray, sharp claws. The angle is terrible for force, and the cloth armor catches the worst of it. The scratches drag along cotton layers without doing much. Still, the fight in it, the resistance shoving up into my chest, makes my breathing go heavy and my heart try to leave through my ribs. Low-level adventurer fighting low-level monster. This is what it looks like. Not pretty. I do not give it any more room. I bear down with my left hand to keep its head pinned, set the dagger in my right, line up the soft spot on the side of its neck, and drive in with both shoulder and elbow at once. The green glowing blade goes through dark green skin like a knife through soft tofu. A red plume goes out of the wound like spilled mercury. My arm and my sleeve are soaked instantly. I taste copper in the back of my throat anyway from how hard I am breathing. The thing under me is still trying to fight, even bleeding out, and I grit my teeth and twist the dagger inside the wound a few times to push the bleeding faster. The noise out of its mouth turns intermittent, a broken bellows letting out short, gurgling syllables, and a few seconds later it stops moving. I gasp, stand up off it, and put the dagger in twice more, once into the left side of the chest, once into the right, to make sure the corpse is a corpse. Then I drop the blade, sit down on the rock, and let every muscle in me give up at once. As a hunter, the body has the stamina and the reflex for it. The mind has not caught up. My chest is hauling air, the heartbeat in my ears is too loud, and I sit looking at a green corpse and a sticky red arm, and the world refuses to feel real for a few long seconds. Not a game, not an adventure. Real, actual killing. I sit by myself for a while. Once my breathing has come down again, the worst of the first kill nausea backs off. The human animal adapts quickly. I am still a little crooked in my own head, but I have accepted what I just did. The handbook announces my first goblin kill, and the monster compendium officially comes online. Total monsters killed. 1. First blood achieved. Reward arrives, the 0-level cantrip mage hand from the mage class, and intelligence +1. The next milestone wants 10 total monster kills. The book also notes I have accumulated 1 goblin kill, awards me the title Goblin Hunter, with a note that the title will upgrade as my kill count climbs. The current effect under the title is Bane, which adds 10% attack damage in combat against goblins and related evolved species. First blood. Now we are talking. The moment I focus on the handbook properly, several notifications stack up at once, and a strange power surges through my whole body, comes flowing back, and converges in my skull. A warm current rolls through me, brain and spinal cord and limbs all at once, like sinking into a hot spring, like 100 invisible small hands kneading every part of me, and the comfort of it is so dense, I almost lose myself. My head buzzes. When I open my eyes, the world has stripped a veil off it. Sharper, brighter, every edge clarified. Something new prints itself into my consciousness. The shape of a spell called Mage Hand. The fight I just walked out of. The muscle ache and the rattle of nerves drains out of me like the cleanse handed me a fresh body. I check the panel. My strength is still 5. My agility 5. My constitution 5. My perception 5. My charm 5. My intelligence has gone from 6 to 7. Under skills, a single line, 0-level cantrip mage hand at level 1, proficiency 1 out of 10. The most immediate gift of 7 intelligence is memory. The original Gauss's memories, which I have been pulling up scrap by scrap most of the day, are now thoroughly digested and absorbed in an instant. My recall feels sharper than it ever was in my previous life. The point does not feel exactly like raw intelligence quotient though. My reasoning sharpens a little, but only a little, and the rest of the lift lands on memory and on a kind of cleaner mental clarity. And there is one more thing. A weak magic power born of this change is now moving inside me. New, faint, real, like a child running around a new house. The mage hand spell is also in my head, so as soon as the magic feels stable I should be able to start practicing. Not the right time for that though. Not in a forest. I push the thought down. The monster compendium quests are also clear now. Total monster kills, 10 next milestone. Individual species also pay out. Accumulate enough of any one race and the corresponding rewards open. The framework is honest. I come back to the real world. The goblin is dead. Time to collect. I pick up the kicked away stone spear and weigh it. Better than it looks. The haft is sturdier than I expected. I take it. Right now my only weapon is a small dagger, and a stone spear is an upgrade I will not refuse. I just do not know how durable it actually is. Even the original kid never carried a proper hunting bow or a spear, because the wilderness is monster country, and direct hunting is more dangerous and less efficient than setting traps. Cautious strategy is probably the only reason he still has all his limbs. He tried wooden weapons a few times and they all broke. He gave up. The goblin itself wears nothing but a rag across its hips and the rag stinks. I do not strip it. It would not fetch a copper coin and it is doing more good staying on the body. There is nothing valuable on the corpse, and since I am not killing in a commissioned area, I cannot turn in body materials for a bounty. The only thing worth taking is a beast tooth ornament hanging from the neck, and I cut it loose. The natural forest will clean up the rest faster than any burial. I gather my satchel from under the oak, and I leave fast, because the smell of blood pulls in other things, and standing around in the forest after a kill is the rookie mistake nobody survives twice. I do not breathe out properly until I am back at the oak, where the satchel was hidden. My first monster kill went smoother than expected. Time to go home and rest. 10 monsters is not a thing I am doing tonight. The reason I landed that lone goblin so cleanly was the original's intelligence on the area, combined with a planned ambush. And that combination is not the default in this forest. In the wild, low-level monsters travel in packs. 2 fists cannot fight 4 hands, and attacks coming from multiple directions are tricky no matter the individual gap. I am not ready to fight a group without taking damage. I need to go back and digest what I just earned, and get stronger before I push my luck. I walk back the way I came, watching the map. Coming out of the trees and onto the main road I see people again, which is its own small relief. From there I take the same path I came in on. By the time I reach the Grey Rock Town checkpoint, dusk has nearly arrived. The setting sun hangs above the distant peaks. The last of the daylight spills across the graystone rooftops, and the unadorned town goes briefly golden. Most of my day was travel. Actual combat was a short window. After the guard checks me through and I am inside the wall, I decide, firmly, that I have to get a mount, or every job is going to spend me on the road before it spends me in the fight. I am developing toward mage, and constitution and strength are both still average, so I need to budget stamina more carefully than a fighter would. I stop at a bathhouse. The hot water turns my skin red and bleeds the fatigue out of me along with the steam. I shed the cloth armor and put on loose linen, and I feel like a person again. After a fight, a body needs proper rest and a little enjoyment. You cannot hold tension forever without something snapping. The summer night in Grey Rock Town runs on a clean, cool breeze that feels like spring water, the sky deep blue and freckled with stars. The market square in the town center is lit with pine resin torches, open-air stalls strung along the streets with canvas awnings on bamboo poles, wind chimes chinking softly, ceramic pots full of food putting their smells into the air. The original kid was too tight with money to ever come out at night. Walking through it for the first time, I feel something close to wonder. Most of the stalls are food, but there are fortune tellers, cheap jewelry, and a string puppet show that has pulled the biggest crowd. Night watch guards with long swords at their belts walk the perimeter keeping order. The town is bright and easy after dark. I like it. I drop into a squat in front of a sundry goods stall and ask the old man behind it how much the goblin's beast tooth ornament is worth. He leans in, examines it carefully, and says, with the certainty of a man who deals with this kind of thing all the time, that I plundered it from a goblin. I tell him yes, that I killed one in the Emerald Forest this afternoon, and I took it off him. He offers me 1 silver coin, explaining that customers who like the primitive and wild style are not common around here, and the piece is not particularly rare. He adds that this is roughly the market rate and that I should feel free to ask other merchants and confirm. I am generally satisfied with the offer, since 1 silver coin is nearly a quarter of my old savings. But since I do not know the market, I take his advice and shop the price around. Money matters to an adventurer. Equipment, weapons, potions, instruction from a famous master, skill training, all of it costs. The old man was honest. The other quotes hover around 1 silver coin. I finally settle on 1 silver coin and 8 copper coins for the ornament. Next morning I am up before the first town bell, sitting cross-legged on the bed, focused. Mage hand. The cantrip is new, and I have not used it under live conditions. Over half an hour I burned through nothing but failures. Then, maybe from the accumulated attempts, maybe just luck, I land it once. The successful cast is strangely vivid, like my consciousness fed in the right instructions, and the magic in my body began to surge along a specific path and release a peculiar fluctuation. The fluctuation vibrates outward and quickly weaves itself into an invisible phantom arm in front of me. I am sitting on a straw bed with an invisible hand floating in front of me, and the corners of my mouth go up before I notice. I send it drifting around the room with a thought. Send it to grab the dagger off the table, and the dagger wobbles up into the air at the end of an arm I cannot see. I just cast a spell. Actual magic. The kind of thing my previous life had only inside movies and novels. The shock of it lands just about as hard as the shock of finding myself in a new world did. Before I can keep experimenting, the phantom arm comes apart, and the cloth-wrapped dagger thumps back onto the table. Not enough practice. The line on the panel updates, Mage Hand Level 1, Proficiency 2 out of 10. The proficiency tick alone is enough to make me sit down and keep going. I do not leave my room all morning. Most of the attempts still fail. Of course they do. If I could cast on every try, I would not need to sit here all morning. My freshly awakened magic power does not have the legs for sustained casting yet, even though a 0-level cantrip is the cheapest thing on the board. The practice does pay off, possibly with the bonus from 7 intelligence. By the time my magic is nearly tapped out, around noon, I can cast Mage Hand pretty smoothly. Half a day from no foundation to a working spell with no other professional to reference is, I think, fast or slow. I have no idea, but I am satisfied either way. I pull on my boots, my stomach growls on cue, and I go down for lunch. Sophia, wiping a table, looks up when she hears the stairs and her face does a small surprise. The person coming down is thin, black-haired, green-eyed, and apparently looks more energetic than usual today. Eyes bright. She cannot pinpoint what is different. She also notes that this is the first time she has ever seen me at noon, since the original always left before dawn. She does not pry. I ask her if I can have lunch, then change my mind and ask for a double portion. The food is not really what I am after, but my pockets are empty and I have to make do. I am genuinely hungry. The body has started using energy to refill the magic I just spent. She tells me the lunch is nearly sold out and offers to bring me the rest, the extra on the house. I thank her and she waves it off. Today's lunch is oatmeal, stewed beans, and pickled beetroot. And after yesterday's brick of sawdust black bread, the comparison flatters this one wildly. The beetroot has been cold pickled in a sour sauce, fruity and crisp. Several days slide by. I work Mage Hand near town and drill with the dagger every time my magic runs out. The proficiency climbs faster with regular reps. The The panel reads Mage Hand Level 2, 10 out of 20. The level jumped to 2 on the first day, but after the bump the proficiency climbs slower for the same mechanical grind. Maybe it needs live combat to climb properly from here. I walk back toward town with Mage Hand carrying my parcel beside me like a floating shopping bag. At level 2 I can control it fluently. The magic in my body has also grown. Where it used to be a few thin strands, it can now be twisted into a small rope. Though even that description is wrong, because magic is not a tangible fluid. It is closer to an intangible, formless presence. Beyond the magic stored in my body, the world itself is steeped in magical energy, sitting in every corner of it like ley lines. Casting a spell the way it feels from inside is reshaping that ambient magical energy through my own magic power, and the spell's engraved on my will, and manifesting an effect in a specific area in a specific way. The size of the effect depends on the quality and quantity of my magic, and on the spell itself. Mage Hand is cheap. The cantrip costs little of my own magic. Casting range is about 10 meters around me. Past that, the spell drops. It is not really a combat spell, more an auxiliary tool, opening a door from the inside without a key, lifting things at a distance. In a fight, I have already worked out a few uses for the roughly 10-pound force I can put on it. Disrupt the enemy at the wrong moment with a shove to break their guard while I attack. Or before the fight, lift the dagger above the enemy and drop it with gravity behind it. The drop trick is only useful when the enemy has no idea I am there, but disruption beats the dagger does not. A small invisible hand on an ankle, a shove or a pull at the right beat, even at a low force, can be lethal if the timing is right. Combat is not just trading and parrying. The result lands in a single instant. The Adventurers Guild of Grey Rock Town is a 3-story stone building, painted bright red at the dead end of the main road, across from the square. The banner over the porch shows a sword, a shield, and a staff snapping in the wind, and adventurers go in and out under it constantly. The kid I am wearing has lived in Grey Rock Town for over a year, and never once walked in. The most he ever did was sneak a glance through the door as he passed. The reason was not a guild rule, it was inferiority. He felt only powerful adventurers and professionals belonged in there, and that wandering in would invite stares and questions. Under the look of 2 guards in elite light armor at the door, I walk in like any other adventurer. The first floor is a public hall, similar to the service halls of public institutions in my previous life. The crowd is dense, adventurers in armor and various weapons standing in small groups talking. One says the last time he fought a gnoll his sword got dulled, and the reward did not cover the repair. One says even creatures like goblins look weak, but more than 3 of them is a totally different story, be careful. I scan the hall. Half-orcs, gnomes, dwarves, all of them mixed in, though most of the crowd is still human. An inquiry counter wraps the back of the room in a half-circle with several receptionists behind it, and the walls around it are covered in posted quests. One slip offers 3 silver coins per 5 slime cores from the monster slime, long-term. Another posts 50 copper coins per stalk of bloodtooth fern, with the plant required intact. I stare at the wall, dazzled, and decide to go straight to the front desk and just ask. The young woman at the counter has a clean face and a careful posture. She greets me as receptionist Petra, employee number E, 21051. Polite, balanced, well-trained. I tell her I am here for the first time and ask what I need to do to accept tasks. She tells me I need to register as an individual adventurer first, and adds that the registration fee is 1 silver coin, and asks if that is acceptable. I tell her yes, and pull a silver coin out of my pocket, quietly thankful for the goblin ornament I sold a few days ago, because without it, I would have been embarrassed standing here unable to pay. She slides me an adventurer registration form, and I fill it out. Name, age, basic physical information, permanent address, and proficient weapons or skills. Then hand it back. Her hands move under the counter, and within seconds she produces a white badge, telling me this is my personal identification and proof of adventurer rank, that I will need to present it when accepting or submitting quests, and that a replacement runs 1 silver coin if I lose it. The badge is diamond-shaped, white metal with engraved plant patterns. Workmanship is not bad. I asked Petra directly for any combat quests involving goblins, preferably ones with fewer monsters. Goblins because they are the most common low-level monster, and because psychological inertia is a real thing. I have already killed one and I feel more confident facing them again. I have not fought anything else and the names alone do not tell me how strong the others are. She thinks for a moment and points me to a section of the wall, telling me there are some goblin requests there, but the numbers are basically double digits and up, because villagers will not pay a bounty for small numbers if the goblins are not actually threatening them. I thank her and walk over. The goblin wall is, as advertised, mostly groups. A common bounty quest for 10 silver coins describes the sheep pen at Stoneclaw village being attacked by a group of goblins, asks for the goblin clan near the village to be wiped out, estimates 10 to 15 goblins, asks for the complete left ear of a goblin as proof, time limit 5 days. Another common bounty quest pays 50 copper coins per head and asks adventurers to assist the guards in clearing goblins from the main road between town and the Emerald Forest. Long term, again the complete left ear is proof. There are plenty of postings. Every village and outpost in the surrounding area routes its tasks through this guild, the only one in the region. and goblins attack villages and rob caravans constantly. There are no postings for lone goblins. Outside of long-term assignments without specific locations, every harassment job is a pack of 2-digit goblins on with 1-0 level cantrip. I am still standing there with my brow knitting when a low conversation drifts out of the next aisle, and the word goblin pulls my ear over. I am not eavesdropping on purpose. The voice notes that White Birch Village is a bit far, asks if 7 or 8 goblins is workable, and a second voice says relax. Trash like goblins, I can drop one with a single arrow. The party turns out to be 1 male and 2 females, all of them maybe 18 years old. The girl with long curly brown hair wears form-fitting light armor with a bow on her back and a dagger in the side of her long boots, sharp-eyed, talking with her hands on her hips, clearly the leader. The other girl is shorter and quieter, short black hair bangs straight across her eyebrows, gaze evasive, 2 daggers at her waist. The young man stands with his arms crossed and his back against a pillar, expressionless, a long sword at his hip. All 3 of them are wearing equipment more stylish than mine. Leather and light armor in good condition. Weapons bright and clean. In fact, a little too clean, like they have not actually been used yet. Newcomers like me then. The archer girl is holding a quest slip. 7 or 8 goblins, less than the wall numbers, and in a 4-person team even with the money split it would be safer. As a mage I need a front line, and that is exactly what they have. I walk up and greet them. I tell them my name is Gauss, that I am a new adventurer, and ask if they are looking for more members. The voice from out of nowhere startles all 3. The short-haired girl flinches all over. The archer girl looks me over with the kind of scrutiny strangers earn first and does not answer. From the resistance in her expression I can tell she is leaning toward no. I am thin, in a washed-out linen tunic with a few drafty holes at the hem, and the only weapon I am wearing is a battered dagger. Calling me an adventurer is generous. I look more like a young man down to his last meal, taking one last shot at not starving. The only mark in my favor is the face, fairly clean and fine-boned, black hair and green eyes, bright eyes that make people want to look twice. She is not about to recruit a decorative item to her team. She is just rehearsing a refusal. The swordsman against the pillar breaks the silence first. He tells me they are also newcomers and that if I want adventure experience, it is better to find a veteran team. He says it listlessly, but the content is kind. I tell him it is fine, that my goal is also a goblin commission, that I have not found one a single person can do, and that I figured I would try forming a temporary team. Truthfully, I am not looking for veterans. They tend to be career bottom-tier types I would rather not throw in with. The archer girl says she needs to discuss it with her companions. I tell her no problem and step back to give them room. I was never going to push it. I came in with a try it attitude, and if she says no, I just go look for something else. Then she stops me as if she has remembered something, and asks if my main weapon is a dagger, or if I have other specialties. The question is also a setup. She is mentally rehearsing the line that says, their team already has a dagger user, and they politely cannot fit me. I tell her, for melee I use a dagger, and as for specialties, I used to be a hunter so I do not get lost in the wild, and I just learned a spell. A spell. All 3 look over at me in unison. The look in their eyes is the look of people who have just heard a category mistake. The archer girl asks if I am a mage. I tell her I do not know if it counts, but I have indeed mastered a spell. I am not going to hide it. I have already asked to team up, so being cagey is a waste of energy. Words are unconvincing on their own, so I activate Mage Hand. The air twists faintly, and an invisible phantom hand coalesces under the shape of my magic, and I hold out the dagger, and the mage hand grabs the hilt and swings it twice at empty air. The archer girl watches the dagger floating and slashing nothing, and her eyes light up. She steps in closer and asks what spell that is. I tell her Mage Hand. The effect is to coalesce into an invisible hand, and I leave it there for now. Brief, because I do not know whether they are going to let me join. If I lay everything out and then get cut, I will have wasted my breath. She nods repeatedly, eyes still bright, and tells me she likes the sound of it. She is clearly passionate about magic. She tells me they will discuss, asks me to wait, and pulls her companions into a corner. They do not go far enough to hide. Their voices reach me anyway. One asks whether they should form a team with this stranger. Another points out that this is a mage. A third says with a mage and a temporary team it is safer. The first mission is 7 or 8 goblins. Better cautious. The meeting is brief. They come back. The archer girl tells me her companions have no objections, welcomes me to the team, and hopes we cooperate happily on the upcoming commission. She holds out her hand. I shake it and tell her please take care of me, and ask for their names. She tells me she is Haley, that her specialty is bow and arrow, that she provides ranged support for the team, and with a small pause, that she can also cook. The short-haired girl tells me she is Mia and uses a dagger. The swordsman gives me Bell, longsword. Haley is the most enthusiastic now that she knows I am a mage. Mia is the shy one. Bell is the listless one. The personalities are different, and none of them feel like bad people. I ask if they are locals. Haley confirms they are all from Barry, friends since childhood. I have been in Grey Rock Town over a year, and have never seen them around before. That first day, Haley treats the team. She takes us to a tavern for a celebratory meal. The three of them turn out to be from comfortable families, not nobles, but never worried about food or clothes. Roasted meat, ale, salted sturgeon, venison sausage. I eat the most extravagant meal I have had since arriving in this world. Big roasted slabs sizzling with oil drizzled in the shop's secret sauce. The moment my teeth go in, the juice meets the savory salt of the sauce, and both detonate on my tongue. The sliced venison sausage is rich, almost beef-like, with an inexplicable smoky, fruity finish underneath. The chefs of this world know what they are doing, especially next to the black bread, oatmeal, and pickles I have been living on. The bill, on the other hand, makes me click my tongue silently. 3 silver coins and 40 copper coins. A single meal eats my entire net worth. I open my mouth to suggest going Dutch, then close it again because between the registration fee and the meal, I literally cannot afford the split. Embarrassment shows on my face. Belle leans in quietly and tells me not to be polite with Haley. Her family is in trade. They have money. I nod. The wealth gap in this world is not subtle either. The original kid, when he left home as a teenager, was carrying 30 copper coins, a change of clothes, and 1 pound of black bread, and over a year of grinding away he had banked over 3 silver coins, the price of a single dinner. I shake my head. Awareness, not discouragement. The future still belongs to me. Empty pockets are temporary. Once I have money, I will treat them back. I rub the wrinkled coin pouch on my belt and follow them out of the tavern. The next morning we are on a merchant caravan, leaning against mailbags and packages in the back of the wagon, the distant hillside sliding away behind us. Belle and Mia rest inside. Haley is in high spirits, sitting on the edge of the wagon with her legs dangling, swaying with the bumps, watching the wilderness go by. The sky today is clear, blue as transparent sapphire, sunlight cutting through thin clouds and fine golden threads, the light green mountains in the distance softened by haze, the wilderness breeze fresh with grass and trees and forest dew. After registering at the guild, the 4 of us spent a short afternoon getting to know each other and left the next morning for White Birch Village. The walk would take 2 days. I suggested finding a merchant caravan going part of the way and walking the rest. They liked the idea. We found one quickly. Half a wagon in exchange for a team of well-equipped adventurers to ride along was a good trade for the merchants. Haley gets tired of the scenery and turns toward me and starts a conversation. Yesterday's dinner and the afternoon of acclimatization let each of us learn a little about how the others fight, and we are slightly more comfortable around each other. She says, with a small laugh, that she really did not expect me to be a preparatory mage. I apologize for shattering her image of mages. She tells me it is not that exaggerated. The mages she knows have all been wealthy. I am just a bit different. She adds that she actually wanted to become a mage as a kid, but did not seem to have the talent. The chatter rolls on while the caravan carries us across grassland, through woods, around mountains, over rivers, and finally drops us at the agreed point. The trip was safe. No monster ambushes, no surprises. I sigh in relief and also feel a small odd pang of regret. We part with the caravan there. The driver tells us White Birch Village is about an hour's walk down the country road. Follow it to the end, turn left at the fork. The second village in is White Birch. Haley thanks the manager. He waves us off and warns that goblins are small monsters, but never to let our guard down. We watch the caravan dwindle and vanish, and the landscape feels suddenly empty. We push on without resting, and reach the village as the last of the sunlight dies. On either side of the dirt road, deep trees and the dusk wind blows cold past our necks. Haley, who had been excited about this job all day, has gone quiet. The 4 of us proceed carefully. At the fork in the road, a crooked wooden sign reads White Birch Village. Before we even step inside, we hear commotion from the central square, and underneath the commotion, the sound of crying. My heart sinks. Whatever happened in there is connected to our mission, and the connection is not the good kind. Inside the village, a bonfire is throwing dim light over the square. Men with their arms raised yelling that the village must gather its forces now and rescue Jenny and Aisha. Other men looking hesitant and saying it is already dark, that they should prepare weapons tomorrow, and the first group cutting them off. Tomorrow will be too late. Those filthy green-skinned bastards will not give the village time to prepare. Women sit on the ground wailing about their children, faces wrecked with grief. Haley calls out across the noise, asking if this is White Birch Village, telling them we are the adventurers who accepted the commission, asking for the village chief, asking for the situation. The shouting drops away. Under wary stares, an old man leaning on a walking stick steps out of the crowd and introduces himself as the village chief of White Birch Village. He welcomes us and apologizes for the lack of hospitality, says the village is in a dire situation. Haley tells him it is all right and asks him to give us the specifics, since we are here for the commission. She produces the accepted commission document to prove who we are. The chief sighs in relief and starts the story. 2 of the village's women have been carried off by a goblin tribe. The tribe has been active in the surrounding jungle for several months but never attacked people before. The worst they did was occasionally steal a sheep, a chicken, a duck. To reduce the losses, the villagers pooled the money and posted the bounty in Grey Rock Town. The goblins then went quiet for 2 days. No sightings, no losses, and the villagers relaxed a little, expecting adventurers any day now to come clear out the nest. They let their guards slip. Today, as day was sliding into night, the village had its first real harm. 2 women snatched in one go. It is fully dark now, and movement is hard. Outside of the immediate family of the 2 victims, the rest of the villagers do not want to enter dense forest in the dark to fight goblins. People are, in the end, self-interested. So in the square, the village split. The rational side saying night combat is too dangerous, and there is no guarantee of rescue. The family side saying that tomorrow is too late, and the 2 were taken not long ago and everything is still salvageable. That the goblins are only child-sized, and if everyone pulls together, they can bring the women back. Both sides are right. The chief could not decide. Then the 4 of us walked in. He does not say it, but he has already pinned his hope on us. From his angle, except for the black-haired one of us, we are dressed in solid gear, and our combat power is something the villagers do not have. The chief and the villagers look at us. Haley bows slightly, asks for a moment to discuss, pulls the rest of us aside. The square goes briefly silent, and the silence pulses under the surface, everyone waiting on us. A nondescript new adventurer team in town carries the village's hope now. From the corner of my eye, I see the silent villagers, and the pressure begins to climb up my back. Real adventure is full of surprises. I came in here expecting a normal clearing run. Reach the village, rest, scout tomorrow, gather intelligence, plan, kill the goblins, finish the job. The orderly plan has hit a snag at the first step. Belle asks if we are starting tonight. The plan on the wagon was overnight at the village and operate tomorrow. The new situation is reccaped. Haley sighs, says 2 villagers have been taken. If we do not rescue them tonight, it will be too late. But night raises the risk of fighting goblins enormously. Her fingers twist through her hair. I add that we have not reconnoitered yet. Mia echoes that it is definitely dangerous. None of us is an experienced adventurer. Instinct says night is bad. Monsters always see better in the dark than humans do. Reason says wait until sunrise, scout the stronghold, then move. But if we do that, the 2 victims will suffer harm that cannot be undone. We came here on a goblin extermination commission. Inwardly, I sigh. Choices that have no right answer. Haley takes a breath, her forehead damp, and proposes we decide individually and respect whatever the team picks. She counts down 3, 2, 1, and we all say it at the same time. I lag half a beat behind the others and arrive at the same word. Go. A good education in my previous life will not let me be cold-blooded. She breathes out in relief when everyone lands on the same answer. I add that we need to bring villagers familiar with the surrounding woods, and we need lighting. And during the mission, we have to put our own safety first, because rescuing the victims depends on us staying alive. My map keeps me from getting lost, but I know nothing of the unexplored stretches, and I need locals who do. It is the only way to minimize risk. The others agree. We inform the villagers. They pour out thanks. Please save Jenny and Aisha. The relatives of the missing women volunteer immediately. 4 men, the most active voices for rescue in the square, ready to march on the nest themselves if we had not come. To save time, they pull their gear together fast, lift their torches, and we go. The villagers know the general location of the nest. 2 of them walk at the front holding torches in one hand and pitchforks in the other. Fast steps, grim faces. They are the fathers of Jenny and Aisha. Behind them, the 4 of us walk and talk through the plan. Haley lays it out. Belle and Mia hold the front line and engage head-on. She pours arrows from the flank. I pin goblins with magic to open kill windows for the swords, and I switch to my dagger to support if it tightens up. Belle and Mia agree even though it puts them in the heaviest risk position. I agree too. We practiced all yesterday afternoon, and while I do not know how much of training survives contact with monsters, the 3 of them are surprisingly capable. All of them have mastered a prerequisite skill for professionals and use it proficiently. Mia's skill is thrust, a forward lunge with her dual blades that lets her chain strikes on the enemy ahead. Belle's skill is cleave, simple in name, but on activation it surges force into his blade so the slash hits much harder. Haley's skill is precision. On activation her eyesight and grip strength rise, and she lands every shot at mid to short range. Add my mage hand on top. Despite the lack of mission experience, this rookie squad is, on paper at least, stronger than a lot of low-level adventurer squads. That is why I signed on to the operation. 7 or 8 goblins, even at night, are no match for a squad where every member has a skill. We just need to use the skills to drop 1 enemy each at the opening. And from there, it is a sequence of one-on-one fights. The 2 villager fathers ask us to please hold the goblins down for them, and once they have each handled their own enemies, they will come to help us. We tell them not to worry, we can handle a single goblin each. Not long after, we come to a cave. It looks natural, about 2 meters across, falling away into a pitch-black depth. The villagers confirm this is the place. We look in, see nothing. The entrance is slick with moss, and a sharp, pungent stink like old urine drifts out. We stop in front of the opening. I wave to the others to get their attention, planning to tell them I will use Mage Hand to push the spell's roughly 10-meter range into the cave for a quick scout. A sharp shriek goes up beside me, startling me at the worst possible second. I turn toward the noise, see the source, and curse internally. A sharp-eared, green-skinned creature is crawling out of the bushes on my left, shrieking to warn the cave. A scout. They had a scout outside. My heart goes off. Time slows down on cue, my thoughts go crystalline, like I have stepped into bullet time. I grip the dagger, sidestep, and swing the blade precisely toward the little green-skinned creature's throat. The goblin scout tries to dodge on instinct, and at the same moment an invisible force unleashes from behind it. Mage hand. The ghostly arm shoves it hard from behind. The shove is not strong, but it is enough to break the dodge for one critical moment. The metal blade traces a clean arc and goes through the green skin, and blood gushes out like crushed tofu. Die. In the span of one reflex, the fluid slash combined with the perfectly timed spell has opened the scout's throat. The loud shriek collapses into a dry hiss. The compendium notes total monster kills. 2. The body thuds down, head nearly severed, and the murky dark yellow eyes lock onto me, as if trying to memorize the human who took it apart in its last second. Prepare to engage, I tell the others. They had not expected me to move that fast, but there is no time for surprise. The shriek has already alerted the cave. Incessant shouts come pouring out of the dark, the aggressive threats of enraged monkeys as goblins swarm out of the nest. Footsteps multiply in the shadows. In the flickering firelight, pairs of glowing red eyes start flicking out into view. 1 pair, 2 pairs, 8 pairs, 12 pairs, 13 pairs. I have been counting silently and the math is wrong. I shout to the others that the numbers are wrong. There are too many of them, the intelligence was flawed. Watch out. A dozen or more pairs of red eyes line up against us, and it feels as if the whole cave is crawling toward us at once. My heart pounds, my hand clamps on the dagger handle, and I have already learned my second valuable lesson out here. Never blindly trust mission intelligence. 18. I land on the number and I keep landing on it, because the intel was 7 or 8 and the count is 18, and there is no time to ask the Adventurers Guild what went wrong in their paperwork. The 4 village fathers can each pin 1 goblin if we are lucky, and that leaves 14, which means every one of us takes at least 3 at the same time. On paper, that sounds workable. In the dark, with a ring of hideous green faces hissing through brownish-yellow teeth, the raw animal weight of it presses in differently than a single goblin ever did. 1 goblin you fight, a pack you survive. The goblins erupt from the cave and the clearing splits into pockets, each of us swarmed by our own private nightmare. A spear goblin comes straight at me, its murky eyes locked on my jaw and its lips trembling with greed, drool stringing off the brownish-yellow teeth. It throws its shoulder into a stone spear wrapped in tough vines and drives it up at my throat from below. And my vision slows again like a switch flipping. Not just the spear in front of me, a knife goblin sneaking up behind me, a third one circling on the side. I am almost completely ringed by green-skinned runts in the span of one breath. The accelerated thinking gives me the analysis, but my legs are still ordinary human stats. I kick hard off the soil and shove myself sideways into the only open angle, and the spear and the dagger both slice empty air where my body had been. Sweat starts beating along my back. My intelligence is the only outstanding stat I have, and the rest of me is a normal, healthy adult male, which means my brain reacts in time but my body answers half a beat late. I have to live in the gap. The 3 of them close back in before I can press the advantage. I want to take 1 down in the same clean slash I used on the scout, but reality keeps me skating, dodging, parrying nothing because there is no parry. Just movement. Goblins are small. People forget that they are also muscular, agile, and they pack more strength than the size suggests. I will not say it out loud, but the head-on threat of these 3 is on a different planet from the one I ambushed at the cave mouth. Somewhere to my left, a man screams. I glance over while my feet keep moving. The first casualty of the night is one of the village fathers, kneeling in the dirt with a long spear punched clean through his gut, blood sheeting out of him into a pool that grows while I watch. A goblin pounces and starts working the wound with a knife, like a hyena nuzzling open ribs. Its face wears the kind of indescribable joyful smile a torturer wears when nobody is looking. The torch in the father's hand has fallen into his own blood, and it is still burning, throwing the demon shadows of long-eared bodies up across the trees, and the whole scene is too much like a slaughter ritual to register as anything else. My mouth goes dry, my eyelids twitch. I have never had the shadow of death lean over me this close, and the demon silhouettes make my scalp crawl. I cannot afford to be afraid right now, or I will be the next one on the ground. I grit my teeth and the flustered noise in my head drops out, replaced by a strange cold quiet. The bloody scene that hit my soul has hammered me into something steadier. Or, more honestly, the threat of dying right here has forced the coward in me to one side and left the part of me that wants to live in charge. A clean bowstring snaps somewhere behind the trees. A black arrow whistles past my ear and goes through the goblin pinning the dying father, pinning it in place where it stood. Haley, on precision, chest heaving, eyes blazing. The shot was not technically necessary for the fight, but I think she needed to take it for her own sake as much as anything. A second goblin uses her open beat to close on her with a short blade raised at her neck. I see it the way I have started seeing things in this slowed down state, all the relevant pieces in one glance, and I throw Mage Hand, The invisible hand condenses beside her and slams the goblin's wrist sideways, 10 pounds of unseen force shoving the slash off true. The blade clangs against the light armor over her back instead of her skin. The impact rattles up through her ribs, and the thread of blood traces down her lip from a bitten cheek. She staggers, the metallic taste filling her mouth, then catches herself, draws the dagger from her boot, and opens the staggered goblin from chest to stomach in one ferocious cut. Its intestines spill, and it goes down still trying to refuse what has happened to it. She looks across the clearing at me with the kind of look you only give the person who just kept you alive. She tells me thank you. I do not have breath to answer her properly. I nod. Whatever gene the green-skinned runts carry about mages, my using one in front of them has triggered it. More of them peel off the other engagements and come for me specifically. 6, maybe 7 at once. Haley pulls another arrow without being asked, and braces her bow with shaking arms. A second precision sings out, and a blood hole punches clean through the chest of a goblin already half turned toward me. It sways on its feet with more air leaving its lungs than coming in. I cover the distance while it is still standing, slip behind it, and take its head off cheap. 2 kills. The compendium ticks the running total in my mind. Total kills 3. I look at Haley. She looks at me. We do not need to talk about it. The battlefield is in pieces. Mia and Belle and the 3 remaining villagers, each in their own fight, and the only way any of us survive is if she and I clean up our quadrant first. I shout across to her not to keep burning skills. Every precision shot drains a chunk of her stamina, and we are nowhere near the end of this. Now that the panic is cleared, I can see my own advantage as well. As a human, even at Strength 5 and Constitution 5 and average physical stats across the board, I still outclass an individual goblin on raw stamina and explosive power. The reason a normal person dies to 2 goblins at once is not strength. It is the inability to track multiple angles of attack at the same time. And Intelligence 7 gives me exactly that. Faster thought, better routing, plus a mage hand I can put wherever I need it. I can dance. The mage hand goes out again as Haley's arrows keep coming. Her arrow takes a goblin in the upper arm and pins another through the side of the waist. I read the wounds, slide past a third goblin's swing, and arrive at the wounded one. It raises a crude wooden club at me as if a piece of cracked wood between us is going to fix anything. I move through it, behind, beheading slash. Its terrified shriek cuts out at the throat. Total kills 4. I do not pause. The other arrow-pricked goblin is 2 steps over, and I drive the dagger into the open wound at its waist, twist hard, and stir until something vital tears. Total kills 5. The dagger feels different in my hand. There is a faint white shimmer along the edge when the blade meets goblin skin, and on contact something surges out of me into the strike, an inexplicable extra weight behind every cut. That has to be what it is, I realize, even as a new light of text writes itself across my vision. The system tells me I have earned the title Goblin Hunter, and the title will upgrade as the kill count climbs. The current effect is called Nemesis, and against goblins and their evolved kin, my attacks deal an additional 10% damage. So that is what the white shimmer is. Of course it is. The fear that has been clawing at me washes out of my chest. I am soaked in blood from collar to knees, breath sawing in my throat, stamina ticking down faster than I would like, and somehow my eyes have gone more determined than they were 5 minutes ago. I look at the 4 goblins still circling me in my blue eyes, reflecting the firelight off the burning torch in the dirt. Must do something to their nerves, because they start trembling. Goblins are cruel when they are winning and cowardly when they are losing. That is in the compendium. The cruel half drove them out of the cave to swarm us. The cowardly half is finally remembering it exists, now that their friends are coming apart in the dirt around me at speed. Plus whatever invisible weight Nemesis is putting on them. They have started to feel it. Now, who is the hunter, and who is the prey? I grab a fallen goblin short blade off the dirt because, rusty and unmaintained as it is, it has more reach than my dagger. Haley's arrow takes another one through the lower leg, just enough to lock its foot in place. I push off the blood-dark soil and close the distance fast. The other 3 stand frozen where they are. The blade comes down diagonal. The edge bites and accelerates the moment it touches skin, which is Nemesis again, and the goblin loses its neck in one shoulder and an arm in one cut. Blood spatters across my face. Total kills 6. A muffled grunt comes out of me and the blade keeps moving. The next goblin meets my swing with its wooden club, but I pour everything into the strike and the club spins out of its hand. I take a breath, plant my hips, and cut it in half at the waist. Total kills 7. In the corner of my eye, Haley has climbed up onto a tree branch and is staring down at me with her mouth slightly open. What is up with this guy? The look on her face is the look people give a thing they did not realize was on the menu. I am running hot. My brain is throbbing, my thighs and arms are shaking from too many bursts in a row, but my body and my consciousness are flying. I swallow blood-flavored spit and turn on the last 2 goblins. Their courage is gone. Their hands shake on their weapons. Mage hand. The invisible hand snaps down out of the air. 10 pounds of unseen force ripping the weapon out of one goblin's grip, then immediately ripping the other ones loose too. They are disarmed in less time than it takes to describe it, standing naked in front of me without their last shred of resistance. I am not wasting an opening like that. I close the gap, 2 hands on the rusty short blade, hips into the cut, and slice both of them in half at the waist as they try to turn and run. Clean and even. Total kills 8. 1 goblin breaks for the trees. I grind my heel through a slick of foul intestines on the dirt and lunge after it. 3 hard strides, and the blade sinks into a soft tofu-like abdomen. I twist my wrist hard enough to shred organs through their connections, and the goblin lets one last unwilling shriek out into the woods before going down. I pull the blade free and my legs give out. I drop to one knee, hand braced on the dirt, lungs roaring. The bursts have drained more stamina than I budgeted for, and now that the immediate danger is past, the body has filed the bill. Total kills 9. My cloth armor is shredded across the chest. I have a dozen small cuts from blades I did not realize had touched me. I can hear my own breathing over the woods. My calves and arms will not stop shaking. I tell myself, in something close to a complaint, that this stings. Then I let it go, because the moment I have to spare for being tired is the moment I will lose somebody. Honestly, I performed above my level. After the scout I killed cleanly at the start, I took down 7 goblins in a row, which is not what the math says a freshly awakened cantrip mage should be able to do. Haley's arrows did half the work, repositioning goblins, wounding them, opening the windows my dagger walked through. Without her flank pressure, the scales would have tipped the other way fast. But the rest is on me, on the will to keep cutting after the body started begging me to sit down. The goblins lost the will to fight first. I kept fighting, even with stamina overdrawn, which is the only thing that decided life and death tonight. Up in the tree, Haley lowers her bow at last. Her arms hang heavy sore from the rapid draws, clearly already strained. A young man's scream rips across the clearing. Belle. There are 9 goblins still on the other side. Mia and Belle and the 3 remaining villagers are still in it, and Belle just made a sound I did not want to hear out of him. Belle is on the ground. His right Achilles is a torn mess, a hole gouged out of it down to bone, and he is wailing through clenched teeth and swinging his longsword in wide, useless arcs from where he has fallen. 4 goblin corpses already lie around him, but the swing is not killing anything anymore. He has lost composure to the pain and is spending the strength he has left on air. Mia is panting near him, dual blades out, trying to push past to reach him before 2 goblins finish him off. What is standing in her way stops me on the path of my next breath. It is a hobgoblin, a full head taller than the other goblins, broad through the shoulders, thick-boned, vicious in the face with sharp fangs that jut up past its upper lip. It stands roughly 1 4/5 meters tall and carries a black iron machete, the craftsmanship crude but the blade wide and serious, and over its chest it wears a piece of ill-fitting leather armor. If ordinary goblins are small fry, this one is the elite that leads small fry. It cuts down at Mia. The machete tip splits the air with a shrill whistle. She gets her dual blades up in front of her face on instinct. The impact slams into the cross of her parry, sparks flash, and she is launched backward off her feet by the raw weight of the hit. I curse in my own head. The mission description said ordinary goblins. The compendium acknowledges that elite individuals do occur in larger nests. Hobgoblins, goblin shamans, 2-headed goblins, but rarely. This one had either hidden during the engagement or stayed back in the cave until the noise drew it out. I never picked up on it before now. It is not a true hobgoblin, only a goblin part of the way down the evolution path. It is still a long way from a real hobgoblin in power, and any actual professional would shrug it off as another ordinary monster. For bottom-tier adventurers who have not yet stepped into the professional realm, it is a wipe in animal form. It also explains the discipline of the others. With a captain figure on the field, goblins keep their courage past the point they should have broken. 3 of them have 3 villagers pinned. 2 are circling Belle like patient snakes, waiting to deliver a killing strike when his last swing wears out. The hobgoblin has Mia, who is the only teammate with enough left in her to keep upright, and the gap in combat power between them is plainly obvious. The only reason Mia is not down already is that the hobgoblin wants her alive. It would rather take her than break her. I see the whole board at once and I shove myself to my feet. A wave of dizziness hits me like low blood sugar, and the trees start to tilt. I have heard it said that on a long run you must never stop halfway, because the moment you stop and start again, your body bills you double. What I just did was much heavier than a long run, and now the bill has arrived. My thighs feel filled with lead. The accelerated thinking state I am realizing has another tax. While the brain is overclocked, the body cannot keep up, and the damage that ought to have registered during the fight all lands at once at the end. Every step now is somebody else's legs. I take a long, ragged breath in and let it out. Mia drags herself up from where she landed and sees me standing there shaking. Whatever last hope she was carrying goes out of her face. She is at her own limit. Thrust has caused her muscle strains in both calves and both arms. The hobgoblin does not give her time to recover. It steps in and chops at her in fast, brutal arcs, and every parry rattles her dual blades harder in her fists. I take another breath. We are all standing on the same cliff edge. There is one path left that is not falling off it. I look up at Haley on her tree trunk, also wrung out, and point at the 2 goblins circling Belle. I shout at her, the same as before, "Make me a window. Please." My eyes will barely stay open, but whatever is behind them must still be sharp, because she answers without arguing. She does not know what use one more opening on an ordinary goblin will be at this point, but the heroic insanity of how I fought in the first half of the engagement bought trust I have not paid for yet. She takes a long breath, lifts her chest, brushes the sweat-plastered hair off her forehead, and her trembling arm draws an arrow out of the quiver. She rests the fletching on the string without drawing. She has one shot, maybe. I bend down and pick the dagger up, and the short blade I had been using is too heavy for the arms I have left. The dagger will do. I drag my legs, which feel like wet stone, in the direction of Belle. 1 step. 2. The hobgoblin notices my crooked approach, and a flicker of confusion crosses its face. It is not a stupid creature. It has child-level reasoning, but it cannot work out what threat a human who can barely stand up poses by limping toward its 2 subordinates. It writes me off as a non-factor and turns back to Mia. She is still resisting, and it is annoyed about that now. It bares its teeth and the pupils narrow. I stagger over to Belle. He has gone bone white from blood loss, sword still wobbling in the air in front of him by reflex. The 2 goblins do not advance. They turn their heads in unison and look at the new figure walking up to them, which is me, head to toe in sticky reeking blood that is starting to scab where it is dried. I ignore my own filth. By the time I reach them, the short walk has brought me back a thumb's width of strength, which is all the budget I have. I lift my head and lock eyes with them. The 2 goblins sniff. It is not until I am close enough to touch them that they get the smell, and the smell is the foul blood of their own kin. Some invisible pressure lifts off me like the resentful spirits of 9 dead runts are still clinging to my back, scratching for purchase, telling these last 2 what they were warned about. Whatever Nemesis is doing at the title level, it has me holding individual ordinary goblins under the same kind of natural restraint a cat holds over a mouse. I gather what I have left and slash my dagger at one of them. It is not enough. Even with deterrence laid on them, my strike has less than a third of its earlier weight, and the goblin stumbles back 2 paces and clears the swing. The other goblin's eyes change. Whatever spell my arrival had laid on it has cracked the moment I missed. The cunning comes back in. It can see, now, that I am almost finished. A bowstring whips somewhere behind me. A black streak ripped in silver moonlight crosses 20 meters of air and buries itself precisely in the chest of the goblin that just dodged me. Haley, forcing the precision skill one more time. Her right arm hangs flushed and limp at her side after the release. She tells me, from across the clearing, that the rest is on me. The arrow is the window. I take it. I get both hands on the dagger and drive myself forward, ignoring the screaming in my feet. My body's momentum is more useful to me than my arm strength right now. The dagger sinks into the open arrow wound, and I keep walking, shoving the wailing goblin backward by the blade alone for several meters. It is hit by something it cannot resist, life force pouring out of it, eyes hazing. A mouthful of blood sprays out onto my chest, and the dim light in its eyes fades to nothing, and the system writes across my vision. The compendium says total monster kills, 10. Then it says next stage, reach a total of 50 monster kills. Then it says reward obtained, mage class skill, first circle spell, magic missile. Then it says my constitution has gone up by 1. Then it tells me my current constitution is 6. Before I can process the words, fresh power floods my body. The wrung out muscles in my arms and legs unknot themselves under what feels like warm rain. Breathing goes deep and steady. My organs are being strengthened at a rate I can feel. The shaking in my calves quiets. Within seconds, except for the external cuts I already had, my body has been overhauled. A new spell sits in the back of my mind like a chord that was always there, and I just learned the name of. So that is how the Adventurer's Handbook works. Every stage clear, a reward. Good to know. The other goblin, the one that had finally found its nerve and come for me, swings a club at my face. I roll my shoulders and slide under it without trying. The new constitution point has tightened the gap between my brain and my body, and a single ordinary goblin is suddenly nothing. The dagger finds its waist, twists, shreds, comes out. Total kills 11. In the tree, Haley's mouth opens. 5 seconds ago, I was the corpse who was about to fall over. Now I am moving like the first 10 minutes of the fight. She cannot work out what changed, but the hope she had given up on lights back up in her eyes. If I am back, maybe. A roar comes ripping across the clearing. The hobgoblin's machete erupts with sudden weight. Mia hears a crisp crack from her own arm, the sound of bone breaking, and the strength in her hands goes out at once. The next chop launches her. She slams into a tree, sprays a mouthful of blood, bounces off the trunk, and falls in a small heap on the ground. The hobgoblin licks its lips. Human blood scent has set its skin feverish. It looks across at the broken figure of Mia and steps slowly toward her. 1, 2, a whistle behind it, a short sonic snap, and a sharp pain in its back. My dagger has just slipped through a gap in the leather armor at its waist and stuck in. The pain blooms across its lower abdomen fast. It roars 3 short roars and whips around, eyes swollen red, glaring at me where I have backed off to put distance between us. I just threw the dagger. I have no intention of being there when it gets to me. It is past thinking now. It does not pause to ask why the human who could barely stand is suddenly standing fine. It only wants to rip me apart, pull the intestines out, gouge out the heart, eat the flesh until nothing is left, so that the pain currently racking it has somebody to pay it back. Its muscles bulge across its frame. The skin tone deepens to a feverish crimson. Knotted muscle bunches under thickening hide, and its rage ignites a primal layer beneath the hobgoblin form. It has become a bloodlust-soaked beast, larger than it was a breath ago. I, on the other hand, have gone very calm. A whole night of fighting has hammered every part of my mind into one piece in this single moment. Other people call this state flow. I do not have the energy to call it anything. The hobgoblin stomps and the ground answers. Its muscles detonate and it comes at me like a tank, splitting the wind in front of it. On the edges of the clearing, Haley holds her breath. Mia and Belle, both pinned to the dirt, raise their chins enough to watch. Whether I can do it or not is the question on every face I can see. I cannot hear them. There is only the thing in front of me. One hand laid flat across my chest, the will behind my eyes hardening to the point it almost has a shape. Intelligence 7 is not a few percent over 5. It is potentially 2 or 3 times the ceiling. I have not been tapping it. A handful of days of cantrip practice was never going to draw the bottom of it up to the surface. Until right now, with that terrifying thing crossing the dirt at me, the spirit pulled tight in my chest finally cracks the invisible barrier between me and that depth. The pure spiritual force surges out across my brain. My hair lifts in a wind that is not there. The first circle spell magic missile, just imprinted on the foundation of my will, wakes at the same time. The secret of a cast is focus. With my spirit pulled to the limit, the entire world simplifies. The hobgoblin is closer, 5 meters. Drool flicks from its fangs as it runs. A blue light begins to glow in my palm. It is faint at first, then expands, brightening fast, swallowing the dark of the forest with its own light. By the time the orb has formed in my hand, it is heavy enough that I feel its weight against my wrist, and the hobgoblin is 1 second from reaching me. 1 second is forever. I throw the orb. It elongates into an elliptical beam of light and lances through the air. It hits the hobgoblin square in the abdomen, and the impact is the impact of a train. The body flies backward without a chance to resist, blue halo expanding inside it from the wound out. The halo tearing through skin and flesh and bone in the same instant. The body looks fragile under the surge of magical power, like wet paper laid on the rim of a pot. The blue energy punches all the way through and detonates as it strikes the ground beyond. The forest lights up and blue fire shot through with red flesh, blooming in the dark like fireworks. The beam dies. A fist-sized hole sits where the hobgoblin's stomach used to be. Its body slams into the soil with its machete still clenched in one hand, dust rolling up off the impact, and it does not move again. I have not moved either. I am locked in the throwing stance, arm out where it was when I released. My gaze shifts to the last 3 goblins. They were busy with the village fathers. The energy surge pulled their eyes. They watched their captain go down in a single spell, and now they realize the human looking at them is the one who did it. Their bodies start to tremble like beans on a sieve. Ordinary goblins have low intelligence, but enough of it to know they are looking at the thing that kills them. Without any hesitation, they drop their weapons, abandon their kin reduced to severed limbs around them, and run. They throw their armor as they go. Goblins are, in the end, exactly what they are. It is over. I look around the clearing as it goes quiet and let my breath out. I have no intention of chasing the 3 runners. Goblins separated from a nest die fast in the wild, unless they find another nest willing to take them. And these 3 are not going to find one tonight. More importantly, my mana is gone. Mage Hand is cheap, the cantrip costs almost nothing, and even with stamina overdrawn earlier, I had a respectable mana pool going into Magic Missile. The first circle spell drank all of it on 1 cast. The empty mana burden is its own pain. My head throbs. My spirit overextended itself, winding up the strike. And the only reason I am still standing where I am, not moving, is that I have nothing left to move with. Looking cool was not part of the plan. Fortunately, the lingering aura from the spell was enough to scare the runners off on sight. Because in the state every one of us is in right now, 3 more goblins would have been a problem. One of the village fathers calls out to me. "Lord Adventurer, are you all right?" The 3 remaining village men have taken some injuries but are still on their feet. Ordinary goblins have no real edge over a healthy human in a fair fight. But tonight was never fair, and the dark gave them every advantage the day would have stripped. Seeing me locked in place staring at the trees, they come up cautiously. They have started to realize that the shabby, unremarkable young man at the back of the party is the actual leader, and that the comet of magic that ended the captain figure is going to be the lead story of the village's next gossip evening. I tell them the battle is over, and to go into the cave and find the women. I tell them please send a runner back to the village and call for help. My companions need medical attention, and so do their friends. I look at the rest of the party. This adventure has been incredibly tragic. Belle has a broken leg. There is no telling whether it heals clean. He saw me drop the spell, his nerves let go all at once, and he passed out where he lay. Mia's injuries are worse on the inside. She is on the dirt, unable to lift herself, and a mouthful of blood and bits of flesh keeps coming up. Both of them are in real trouble even after winning. Haley and I are in much better shape comparatively, and neither of us can walk far either. The village father who was hit first has not moved in a long time, and I know he is gone. The torches come back from the village not long after. A rooster crows at the appointed hour in White Birch Village. After an unsettled night, the village is wrapped in a quiet, exhausted sorrow. The good news is that Jenny and Aisha were found in the cave alive. Tattered, filthy from the cave, bruised across the body from rough handling, but alive. I have enough social sense not to ask anything else about what was done to them in there. The bad news is that one village man did not come back. He was Aisha's brother. At first, the villagers waiting in the square felt some resentment when they heard about the death, especially since it was one of their own and an adventurer party had been hired specifically to prevent that outcome. The resentment did not survive the trip out to the cave. The ground at the mouth was stained dark red. The reek of raw blood and the stench of cut bowels hung over the clearing like a low cloud. Severed green arms and hands and thighs lay where they fell, and pieces I will not name in front of a hot meal lay across them. Villagers with weak stomachs collapsed and started vomiting. Belle and Mia's wounds, and the 3 survivors' accounts of the size of the fight, scrubbed any complaint out of the village. The party turned into the heroes of White Birch Village over the course of one morning. The 4 of us were put up in the best stone house in the settlement. There is no proper doctor. An apprentice herbalist sat by Belle and Mia all night, doing the basic bandaging and not much more, and the only thing keeping the 2 of them from sliding off the edge is a small red pill Haley produced from her own pouch. The pill, she told me, briefly activates the life force in the body to hold a wound stable. The catch is that it cannot be taken more than once in a short span without doing real damage. Belle and Mia are stabilized for now, not safe. They need real medicine. The sun comes up, the mist burns off. I am at the road sign at the edge of the village, seeing Haley off. Inside the village's only cart, Belle and Mia lie on padding, Haley moving back and forth with fever-cool cloths for their foreheads. Haley is not taking them back to Grey Rock Town. Grey Rock Town is large for the frontier, but its medical services are nothing next to a real city. And Barry, the trio's home, is the closest forest city in the other direction. Back home, they get proper treatment. The driver up front calls back that it is almost time to go. I ask Haley whether she wants me to come along. She tells me not to worry, that once they reach the main road to Barry, traffic picks up and the road is safe. Her face is fully drained of the cheerfulness from 2 days ago, and she has to push her smile a little to get it onto her mouth. She tells me, anyway, that I still have the quest closeout to handle here, and she is leaving the rest of it in my hands. She blinks at me with that pause people put in when they want to ask a question and are saving it for later. Her opinion of me has rearranged itself. When she first met me, she had me sized up as a poor low-level adventurer she did not really want on her team. After our afternoon of acclimatization, she had revised that to a low-level provisional mage who happened to learn one spell but did not have the family backing to take it anywhere. After last night, she does not know what to call me. With as little experience as she has, she can tell I do not fit the category she has. She tells me, if I ever come to Barry, to find her at the Golden Beak Merchant Guild on the west side of the city, and Belle and Mia, and she will host me properly and feed me well. I tell her if I have the chance, I will. In honesty, in the near future, I am going to be working out of Grey Rock Town. She has no need to know that yet. She tells me she is leaving, and that the next time we meet, I will probably already be somebody very formidable. She waves. The cart starts. I watch the chestnut hair vanish at the end of the dirt road. Less than 3 days. The team formed and the team broke. Whether we ever see each other again is anyone's guess. This world is not the one I came out of. Without phones or the internet, friendships at the bottom rung are thin, and parting often is permanent. The morning breeze brushes my hair, and I turn back toward the village. I did not have a deep friendship with any of the 3. I think any of them would have been worth knowing if we had time, and we did not. I cannot help feeling a small ache about it. I decide to stay in the village a day longer. The villagers welcome it as if it were a holiday. Ordinary commoners in this world hold a quiet reverence for mages. The methods of other professions are visible. You can see a sword cut, but the flow of magic is invisible, and people fear what they cannot see. Magic is mysterious enough to be awe-shaped from the outside. I did not stay to bask in the admiring looks. I stayed partly to let my body finish recovering, and partly to clean up the field. The job submission items are goblin left ears. I need to cut those, get the village chief's stamp on the commission document, and gather the loose weapons from the battlefield. I go back alone to the clearing in front of the cave. The blood has dried, and after a night of fermentation, the stench is several times worse than it was last night. I work through the stink, swallowing nausea, and pick the open ground for value. Stone and wooden weapons are not worth carrying. Iron is worth carrying even when it is half destroyed. 2 short knives, 4 daggers, and the long machete that the hobgoblin had been swinging. The machete is the centerpiece. Its leather armor is too shredded to be worth anything, which is a real pity, because intact it would have paid well. Around the hobgoblin's neck is a rough green stone the size of a peanut, hanging on a leather cord. A faint green light pulses inside it, and when I close my hand around it, I feel a comfortable steady current. I do not know what it is yet, but you do not need a guide to know a treasure. The Captain Goblin's abnormal size might have something to do with this stone. I tidy the outside spoils into a sack and turn toward the cave entrance. I light a torch and go in. The interior is night dark even by day. Green moss is slimed across the walls and the air is sour with old urine and feces. Apparently, these green-skinned things do not have any habit of keeping their living space sanitary. A rat scurries over my boot. The murky air is presumably full of every bacterium and virus this region grows. If it were not for the loot, I would never set foot in here voluntarily. I step over a puddle that I am not going to describe and reach the enlarged chamber at the back of the tunnel. Animal bones, large and small, are piled in heaps with flies and rats and maggots working through them. A stone pot sits in the center over a dead firewood pile, the contents inside a viscous, turbid mixture of solid and liquid that I am pretending not to look closely at. The tribe was holding a dinner party last night, probably to celebrate the capture of the 2 village women. The celebration became its funeral. On the back wall, hung up like a trophy, is a goblin corpse. Physically slightly bigger than the average runt, but nowhere near the hobgoblin's size. It has been dead a few days, judging by the maggot count. I lift the torch and look at it. According to the compendium, while goblins are evil, they do not normally cannibalize their own kin, especially once a strong individual has taken leadership of a band. Conflicts between separate bands, on the other hand, do happen. I work it out by stages and then slap my own forehead, because the answer was obvious. The intel was wrong because the hobgoblin was an outsider. It came in, killed the original captain of the 7 or 8 goblins the village had been tracking, swallowed the band in the territory, and went from 7 or 8 to 20 in one stroke. That is why the harassments around the village had been minor for months, and then escalated in one night. The fresh, larger band was hungry, and the captain wanted to make a statement. I grit my teeth and let a long breath out. Bad luck of a specific shape. If the hobgoblin had not arrived, 8 ordinary goblins would not have been a problem for the team we built. The night would have closed clean. I can only hope Belle and Mia get there in time. I shake my head. If my reading is right, this is not really the Adventurers Guild's fault. The lesson stands anyway. Outside of intel I have collected myself, I am going to take other people's quest intel with care from now on. I make up my mind on that and start back for the village with a fuller pack than I went out with. Not yet sure what any of it sells for. I rest the night. In the morning, I am on the road back to Grey Rock Town. This trip back, I am planning to convert the spoils to coin, and to outfit myself properly with whatever the resale gets me. As a mage, I do not own a magic wand, which is genuinely embarrassing. I also want to find out how professionals differ from awakened apprentices, and how a person actually crosses that gap. Grey Rock Town. The familiar grey stone walls do something to me without my asking them to. Maybe this is the point of a town. After enough nights in the wilderness, after enough days of wind and weather and ridgelines, you walk through a gate that has fed and slept you before, and the sudden surge inside is hard to put words on. I shoulder my packs and pass the gate guards, fall in with the foot traffic on the main street, catch a couple of curious looks from kids on the road, and feel like a lifetime has gone by since I left. Somewhere along the way, I crossed the line into being one of the dangerous individuals the original kid's memories warned him not to provoke. I shake my head and laugh under my breath. What kind of person? A pack of goblins and one goblin with shoulders pushed me to the edge of my own life. I am still very far from powerful. Submitting the quest is the first thing. I am gritty and stinking, and would love a wash, but the rule of my own life is that I close out a thing before I rest. Otherwise, the half-finished thing sits at the back of my head until the rest is no rest at all. I head down the central avenue to the square. The Adventurers Guild banner is still on its pole, sword and shield and staff snapping in the morning wind. Inside, the hall is busier than my last visit. Lines have formed at every service counter. I pick the shortest line and wait. After a while, the line works to me, and the receptionist is Petra by coincidence. She greets me again as Receptionist Petra, employee number E, 21051. She seems to recognize me. I hand over the commission document, the heavy bag of submission items, and my badge, and tell her I am here to collect the reward. She thanks me for the hard work on the quest, opens the bag, and checks the year count. She tells me, after a small pause, that the quantity looks a little high. I tell her the intel was wrong, that the team encountered not 7 or 8 goblins but a full 20, and the village chief described the situation in writing on the commission document. Petra's face changes. She tells me she is very sorry, that this is an oversight on the Adventurers Guild's part, and that the elevated risk we carried because of it falls on them, and she bows formally at the counter. She tells me she will report it to the supervising department immediately, and somebody will follow up to verify it. Per guild policy, she tells me, the reward for this commission will be doubled as compensation. I nod. With compensation, it is at least an explanation. Realistically, the Adventurers Guild is a multi-kingdom organization. They do not abuse their power, but a bottom-level adventurer like me has no leverage against them, even in a town branch. If a major intel error gets a low-tier adventurer killed, what happens? A new low-tier adventurer steps up the next morning. We are roadside grass, and they regrow in batches. Only professionals control their own fate. In my peripheral vision, a small group of figures in elite gears laughing on its way up to the second floor. The stern guards by the stairs put a hand to chest and salute as they pass. Down here, the rest of us shuffle through a crowded queue. The distinction sits everywhere in this place. Petra tells me the reward for the commission is 9 silver coins, and with compensation, the total is 18 silver coins, and to please keep them safe. She takes a coin bag from under the counter and sets it on the table. She does something else under the table and slides my adventurer's badge back across to me. I take the money pouch and the badge. A significant share of the 18 silver coins belongs to Haley and the other 2, and I am not touching their share. They probably do not need it. The agreement was the agreement. My share is 4 silver coins and 50 copper coins. Including my prior balance, my total cash is 5 silver coins and 12 copper coins. The other spoils I am keeping outright, since I did the heavy work in the fight and I am at the starting stretch of my adventurer career. And Haley had agreed before the job. Petra tells me the quest information has been registered to my adventurer's badge. I ask what registration is for. She tells me it tracks toward access tiers, that completing 10 normal level quests opens permission to accept beginner level quests, and that 3 completed beginner level commissions qualifies an application for bronze level. Bronze level adventurers get more guild benefits and additional purchase permissions. She adds, however, that beginner level commissions usually involve enemies only professionals can fight, and that even with the experience of 10 normal jobs under my belt, she would not recommend taking one until I am genuinely ready. I ask her what level I am at currently. She tells me I am unranked. Above bronze level, there is iron level, silver level, gold level, and at the top, platinum title adventurers. She tells me platinum title adventurers are powerful enough that only 5 have ever been born in our entire kingdom of Karl, and they sit at the pinnacle of billions of adventurers, title holders standing above the rankings. I nod. The adventurer ranking system is straightforward enough to memorize. What surprises me is the platinum count. 5 ever in a whole kingdom, which means even fewer alive at this moment. I try one more question. I ask Petra how a person becomes a professional. She tells me she apologizes. She cannot answer that she is just an ordinary Adventurers Guild receptionist. Under my look, she shakes her head with a small, helpless smile and confirms she is not the right person. I thank her and step away from the counter. The spiky-haired older man in the next slot was about to start shoving me out of the way anyway. I walk toward the doors with Petra's answer still sitting on top of my mind. I do not think she does not know. She works at the Adventurers Guild front counter every day. She picks up adjacent knowledge whether she wants to or not. She either did not want to tell me, or the rules say not to discuss it openly, or she decided the long line behind us was not the venue for that conversation. I am not annoyed about it. It was a casual try. I have other places to dig. Out of the Adventurers Guild and across the square. A blackened stone building sits in the corner with a sign that reads, Black Anvil Workshop. The air around it is several degrees warmer before I get close. It is not the most conspicuous shop in the plaza, but it is the best blacksmith in Grey Rock Town. The rest of the workshop's a step or two below. I know that because I worked here for a stretch as an odd job hand when I first arrived in town, and I saw adventurers who looked seriously dangerous come in to buy gear from time to time. Most of the Black Anvil Workshop's customers are still low-level adventurers. Besides elite weapons and armor, the shop puts out a steady volume of affordable goods made by the apprentices, and resells second-hand gear it has bought back. The affordable stuff is not pretty, but it is honest, more than enough for ordinary adventurers. When I was first kidding myself out a few days ago, I considered coming here and then thought about my wallet and went elsewhere. Today my wallet is heavier. I walk in. The Black Anvil Workshop is split front and back, the storefront full of standard-issue racked goods, the forging yard in the back loud with the clang of hammer on anvil. A male apprentice greets me, plain face, freckles across the cheeks. I happen to remember him. We were nodding acquaintances back then. I greet him by name first. Marin, long time no see. Marin looks up, scans me from head to foot, narrows his eyes, and then he catches my emerald green eyes and shouts a string of recognition syllables, having recognized my face without remembering my name. Embarrassment crosses his expression. I supply it, Gauss, and I tell him I still remember his name, which is Marin. He laughs and reaches over to clap my shoulder, telling me he sees a lot of customers and forgetting names is not strange, and then asks me why I am dressed like this and if I have stopped being a hunter. He has seen enough adventurers come and go to read the dusty, travel-worn look of one off me even through the cheap gear. I tell him yes, that I registered as an adventurer not long ago. His face falls. He tells me he is envious, that his family will not let him do the same. In my old memories, there are scenes of Marin complaining about his parents to me. Unlike me, the outsider drifting through. He is a native of Grey Rock Town, and his parents paid real money to apprentice him at the Black Anvil Workshop, with the idea that he would come out a working blacksmith. In this world, a blacksmith is a secure profession for life. In a lot of people's view, blacksmithing is more respectable than running a low-level adventurer's job and carrying your head on your shoulder. Marin, of course, sees it differently. He is restless. He has the young man's vision of sword and magic adventures, golden wheat fields and roads under sun, laughing with companions, killing monsters, taking commissions, drinking and eating well in taverns of villages and towns. That is the picture in his head. The picture is not wrong. it is incomplete. What the picture leaves out is the part where most adventurers are not the well-dressed elite ones he watches walking up to the second floor. The picture leaves out fighting among scattered limbs in the dark, sleeping in the open, mosquitoes every night, mortal danger out of nowhere, and the loneliness that crawls in from the wilderness when there is nothing between you and the unknown. 2 days from White Birch Village back to Grey Rock Town was already enough to know it. A week of it, a month of it, half a year, and the loneliness only gets heavier. Maybe this is why most adventurers form teams. It is hard for an ordinary person to carry that invisible weight alone. I do not feel like being his teacher today. I keep the analysis to myself and let my face show a small meaningful smile, and tell him I do not think he will like the adventurer life. He bristles, tells me I am looking down on him again, that if even I can do it, he can do it. He has been saving money toward a set of equipment so he can go to the guild and register. I do not know that, and I steer the conversation toward business. I tell him I came to sell spoils, and could he take a look at what they are worth. I drop the bag on the stone table with a heavy clatter. He opens it, peers in, and is startled by the volume. He mutters that he cannot make a call on this much, asks where I scavenged so much equipment, and runs to the back to fetch the shopkeeper. G-Long Betts, the owner, is over 1 9/10 meters tall and built like a fortress. He walks out carrying a massive forging hammer in one hand. A black leather apron is bound at his waist with a wide belt and does not hide the chest and stomach muscles underneath. Black hair cut short, expressionless face, a black eye patch over his left eye, and the one bare right eye is wide and bright as a copper bell. He looks more like a powerful warrior than a blacksmith, which is what most of the town quietly assumes about him, though nobody has ever verified it. What is verified is his forging and smelting skill. The adventurers around here trust it. He recognizes me and uses my name, Gauss, and his rough exterior is an easygoing person. When I first arrived in town and was looking for any kind of temporary work, it was Glon who took me in despite my having no blacksmithing skill. I did not stay at the workshop long before leaving, but my gratitude toward G-Long Betts is intact, and I greet him as shopkeeper Glon. He glances at the equipment on the table. He says Marin told him I came to sell spoils. I tell him yes, that they were taken from a goblin band. He raises an eyebrow and sighs, telling me he had not expected even me would go and become an adventurer, in a tone that says he does not think it is a good career. He has seen too many low-level adventurers go out and not come back. He says the world is getting harder. He flips through the equipment on the table while he is talking. He says in worse times more people pick up adventurers' work. In peaceful eras there are more scholars, craftsmen, bureaucrats, and clerks. When he was young there were not nearly this many adventurers. Now in Grey Rock Town the proportion is something like 30 or 40%. Even for a town this central to the adventurer traffic, that is high. He tells me, since I am sort of an adventurer that came out of his shop, he will add 10% over the going rate. He goes piece by piece. The machete is average material, but the quenching is good. 25 silver coins, and a pity it was not better maintained or it would have been higher. One short sword is too damaged to resell as a weapon and can only go for scrap iron, so the price is small. He works through the pile and gives me a total of 36 silver coins. I think it over and nod. I know roughly what secondhand gear goes for around here, and once you factor in the cost to process and resell, this is a fair number. The machete I had no plan to keep anyway. My strength is average and a few swings tired me out, and it does not suit me. Then I take the green stone out of my pocket and hold it up, and ask shopkeeper Glon if he knows what it is. His eyebrow lifts. He pauses. Then a hint of surprise crosses his face, and I know I asked the right person. He tells me it is a life magic stone. He tells me he is not sure about the specific quality, that he is a blacksmith and not a gem expert, but that on the market it could probably sell for over 2 gold coins. 2 gold coins. Marin, who has been hovering behind us pretending not to listen, makes the face of a person who is not sure he heard correctly. 2 gold coins is 200 silver coins, which is 20,000 copper coins. For ordinary people it is a small fortune. My entire money pouch right now holds 5 silver coins and 12 copper coins. The previous dream the original kid had of owning a small house in Grey Rock Town would be a settled matter, with money left over for furnishings. To put it in terms of work, a common low-level laborer who can actually find work earns about 10 copper coins for a full day. Even a single man, after food and lodging, struggles to save 5 copper coins a day, and that does not account for clothes or medicine. Even with steady work and a full month of labor, the savings come out to maybe 150 copper coins. 2 gold coins translates to 11 straight years of full work without a day off. In reality, a low-level laborer never saves up a single gold coin in a lifetime. Measured against gear, a set of leather armor is around 15 silver coins, so 2 gold coins buys 13 sets. Medium-scale mail is 60 silver coins per set, so 2 gold coins buys 3 sets. Heavy armor like full plate is out of reach. A set of full plate armor is 15 gold coins, which is on the order of 15 houses in town. The number is not exaggerated. Full plate armor is true heirloom property, the hard currency of this world. Real estate loses value when war breaks out. Fine armor does not. Fine armor appreciates. It is exactly because Marin knows what 2 gold coins means that he made the face he did in front of his boss. He looks at me with envy bleeding into jealousy. I do my best to feign calm. I had guessed the green stone was treasure. I had not guessed it was this kind of treasure. Seeing the look in Marin's eyes, I will not pretend I did not feel a small private smugness. In the original kid's memories, Marin was not bad to him, friendlier than the other apprentices, willing to chat in the slow hours. There was also a slight thread of condescension underneath, in stray words, the way a city person might inquire about a country person's life, to be reminded of his own status. Marin was not a bad person. The condescension was unconscious. Now the picture has flipped a little. I press my lips down to keep my face honest. It seems even in this other world there is a version of the saying about brothers, the one that goes, "Afraid my brother lives a hard life, and also afraid he buys a fancy carriage." Glon tells me if I want to convert it to coin, to go to Widow's Alley, to the stone house with the sign reading Thorn Shack. The shopkeeper there buys magical items. He adds that if I know any knowledgeable customers, I can trade with them directly instead. Glon shrugs. 2 gold coins is a lot to ordinary people, and it is not a lot to him. The surprise on his face earlier was not about the stone itself. It was about me, a green low-level adventurer, producing a thing like that. The pile of second-hand weapons had already been over his expectations. I thank him sincerely. He is the most knowledgeable person I currently know, and I have no other connections. I gather the nerve to ask for one more piece. I tell him I am sorry to keep asking questions, and how a person becomes a mage professional. His look at me sharpens. The question alone tells him things. Ordinary people would not specify the mage profession without confirmed talent for it, which means awakened magic and at least one mastered spell. He works through the implications, and his eyes settle. That is why I had so many spoils to bring back. If I am already on the path to a professional, the loot stops being so extraordinary. He glances at Marin, who has perked his ears up to eavesdrop, and tells me to come with him. He turns toward the inner courtyard. Marin mutters that this is biased of the store manager, and I glance back at his indignant face and laugh quietly. The inner courtyard has several furnaces and apprentices working through the morning smelt and forge. The crisp ring of hammer on anvil, listened to long enough, sets a steady ache behind the ear. Glon pushes open a small door. Although I worked in the shop for a stretch, I have never been in his restroom before. I look around as I step in. My eyes catch on a set of full-plate armor standing on a rack by the bed. Heavy armor, complex but powerfully aesthetic. Dozens of components linked by hinges, straps, and rivets. Silver-white plate, a pointed helmet with carved cheek guards, the breastplate raised at its center like an inverted ship's hull, with a longitudinal ridge that looks like a shark's dorsal fin or a frozen wave. Cold metallic shine, layered shoulder pieces like dragon scales, gauntlet plates, steel finger plates, hard battle boots. If an ordinary full plate is worth at least 15 houses, the armor in this room is something else. There is no gilding, no silver inlay, no fancy etching. There is only the simple violent practicality of a real piece of work. I estimate against the cheap stock outside that this armor might be worth on the order of 50 houses. The longer I look, the surer I am. Store manager, you have to be a master, do you not? I look at him with the question on my face. He clears his throat and tells me not to look at him like that he is just an ordinary blacksmith now. He recovers with a smile and tells me that, as a qualified blacksmith, it is only natural to know some things about professionals, is it not? I nod immediately. Since he has said it, who am I to disagree? He shuts the door, pulls out a stool, and gestures for me to sit. He starts at the basics. He tells me there are many races in this world, the most common being gnomes, dwarves, halflings, and half-orcs, all of them fundamentally not very different from humans, the differences being external in body type and appearance. There are also special races, dragonborn, elves, orcs, mermaids, banshees, and dragons, who carry powers beyond humans by bloodline. Outside of the racial gifts, people who develop extraordinary abilities through training are called professionals. He tells me that over generations, many professional paths have been explored, that most of them have disappeared into history waiting for someone to dig them up again, and that only the mainstream paths have been passed down to today. Warrior, warlock, mage, ranger, druid, rogue. These are the stable mainline professions with the highest ceilings, suitable across many races. He adds that the word suitable is relative. The actual crossing from ordinary person to professional is extremely difficult. Of 10 adventurers with passable aptitude, perhaps one will get over the line, perhaps fewer. He tells me he imagines I have already touched some prerequisite skills for professionals. Sword skills, combat techniques, magic. He pours himself a cup of water, pours one for me, and looks at me over the rim with a particular expression. I nod. There is no point in hiding it. He is teaching me for free, and being secretive would be rude. I tell him I have mastered the cantrip Mage Hand and a first circle spell, Magic Missile. He chokes on the water. He coughs into his hand, gets himself under control, and his expression toward me turns complicated. He tells me my talent is even better than he had guessed, and asks if I awoke the spell suddenly after my magic awakened. I nod. Though it was a reward from the Adventurer's Handbook, it was indeed sudden. He looks like he has confirmed a guess. He tells me my luck and talent are very good, and that perhaps I do not understand where my magic actually came from. I understand, but I do not interrupt him. He tells me some say the flash of insight is a divine gift, while others say the world is full of latent combat techniques and magical inheritances waiting to be touched, and most people never meet one in their lives. Occasionally, a lucky person finds the inheritance and the gift falls into their hands. Outside of those flashes, most others who want skills like combat techniques and spells have to acquire them through books or instruction from another professional, and only after long practice do they have a chance to master them. He could guess I came to my spells by enlightenment rather than schooling, because the original kid had none of the resources schooling requires. I asked the obvious question. So, mastering a combat technique or a spell makes a person a professional. He shakes his head. Not at all. That is just the first step, the most basic threshold. People at this stage are called professional apprentices. To become a full professional, he tells me, the chosen skill must be practiced to a level of extreme proficiency. There is no quantifiable measure for the threshold. It is judged by personal feeling. When the skill reaches the right level, the practitioner begins to feel a mysterious guidance in the surrounding world. This guidance is called the professional path. The professional path will condense an invisible entity inside the body, called the job rank. The job rank is the source of a professional's power, and to this day nobody has defined it precisely. The mainstream theory is that it is a product of the rules of the world, and that by walking a professional path and continuously practicing the abilities and duties of that profession, a person becomes stronger. I listen with half understanding and a small private joy. The Adventurer's Handbook can quantify skills, which is an advantage other people do not have. I ask, so what I need to do is to practice a spell to extreme proficiency, and then I can receive the guidance and walk the mage's path. That is the simple version, he tells me, but the reality is not so simple. Practicing a skill to the guiding stage takes a long time, and many people cannot finish the work in a lifetime. At that stage, the practitioner usually needs the guidance of a renowned master. Even after reaching the guiding stage, there are further difficulties. The professional path will subtly transform the pre-professional's body. Some people cannot adapt to the transformation, and they may need potions, reagents, transfer rituals, and special treasures to help. The methods of assisted promotion vary by profession and by person, until the job rank is fully condensed and the practitioner is officially a first-tier professional. The whole road, in a normal case, takes from 1 or 2 years to several decades. I sit through the rest of his explanation, absorbing as much as my memory will hold. Then I stand and bow deeply. Nobody in this world is kind for nothing. Even with Glon's good temperament, professional knowledge is not normally given to outsiders for free, because professionals need resources to advance, and resources are limited. Every new professional in the territory is one more competitor for the same pool. Glon is most likely doing this because he thinks well of me and wants to invest in a relationship for the future, or because the brief time I worked at his shop earned me the small accommodation. Either way, he told me a lot of secrets, including that a mage benefits significantly from a magic wand, not just in combat power. In daily practice, a magic wand accelerates the effect of every cast. And the life magic stone, he added, is one of the materials used to make a magic wand. Near the end of his explanation, he seemed to feel he had said too much, and he covered the slip by telling me he had heard all of it from a professional friend. I let the cover stand. We both knew the trade. Neither of us was going to say so. I tell him I am leaving. He waves me off, says to come back when I have the chance, and watches me go. Behind me, his gaze is unfocused. He looks like he is watching a young man from decades ago walking out of a different shop, ambitious and on fire, the way he himself once was. Professionals, or adventurers more broadly, are extraordinary by nature. They crave the kind of life ordinary people do not dare to walk. Marin catches him on the way out and announces that he has decided to be an adventurer like Gauss, that he does not want to be a blacksmith anymore. Marin, he tells him, I might say something that will hurt your feelings. I think being a blacksmith suits you better. Out of the Black Anvil workshop with a lighter pack and a heavier purse. The pile of machetes and short knives turned into 31 silver coins and 12 copper coins by the time the math settled. It should have been 41, but I dropped 10 on the way out. There was a rapier on the wall I could not stop looking at. My dagger had taken a beating in the white birch fight and was a step from useless, and the principle in my head, the one that says you might as well, went out over my better instincts. I bought it for 10 silver coins, full price, no haggle. 10 silver coins is a real bite for me, but it is cheap for a long weapon. A rapier eats less iron than a broadsword, so the floor price runs lower, and the shopkeeper threw in a friendly cut on top of that. I held it up on the way to the inn and looked it over for the third time, and I liked it more each pass. The blade was straight and slim, about 1 meter long, around 2 fingers wide, with a raised longitudinal spine down the surface that caught the silver-gray gleam of the metal and a triangular point that glinted cold at the tip. The grip was wrapped in plain leather, the crossguard simple, the whole thing carrying that unfussy beauty a tool gets when nobody wasted material on decoration. I held it level and saw my own blue eyes mirrored on the flat of the blade, and they looked smug. I had thought it through before I spent the coin. A broadsword is more versatile, better against mixed opposition, better against armor, and a heavy enough greatsword can crack chainmail at the joints. But a broadsword is also heavy, and my strength is still only 5 against a constitution of 6. A heavy weapon held too long would have me dragging by the third swing, and the enemies I am going to be fighting in the near future are low-tier monsters that nest in packs and like tight ground, where a wide blade has nowhere to go. The rapier is light, fast, precise, slashes and thrusts both, and it fits in narrow spaces. It is also nearly useless against armor and snaps if you abuse it. But how many ordinary goblins or slimes or halflings wear armor worth talking about? Not many. What I do need, sooner rather than later, is a real sword form. Goblins know nothing about weapon technique, so just swinging at one already beats them. But I cannot fight goblins forever. Hobgoblins exist. Two-headed goblins exist. Things worse than that exist. Someone might ask why a man pushing for the mage profession is bothering to train a blade at all. Because I do not want a close-range enemy to read me as a soft persimmon and walk over my corpse on the way to lunch. Combat in real life turns on accidents. If something gets inside my casting distance and decides a mage cannot defend himself, I want him to learn otherwise. On the edge of my new sword, the commission was officially closed. I gave myself a few days off, with the plan to drill magic missile in the back of my head the whole time. The bath came first. I came out of the hot bathhouse with my eyes half shut and a hum in my chest. The tension my muscles had been carrying for the better part of a week melted out under the warm water, and I felt the road wash off me one ridge at a time. 5 copper coins for the bath. Small money. With more coin in the pouch, I felt more comfortable spending it. The point of earning is to enjoy a little, not to hoard 5 copper coins and slap myself into a cold wooden bucket like a peasant. Changing into my daily linen, I noticed the shirt rode too short at the waist. It used to sit right. I wonder if the Constitution point did this. If it did, I am pleased. I was a fingertip over 1.70 meters, short next to most of the working adventurers in this town, and a slow second growth spurt at this age would be free upside. I was already hungry again. I went to the Coral Tavern. It is the better class place in town, a notch above the Nightingale, the same place Haley had taken the 4 of us for dinner the night before they left. Walking in by myself, I felt their 3 absences. By now Haley and the others should have reached Barry. Belle and Mia should be most of the way through their recovery. The Coral was decorated more carefully than I had remembered. Warm yellow lamplight on mottled red brick, a bartender in real clothes pouring at the bar, oak casks stacked behind him like a wall, and the slow malt smell of aged ale leaking out between the staves. Iron chain candle lamps hung from the ceiling, over a dozen elm tables, every table loud with adventurers and weapons, even at this hour. It made sense the place was full. Adventurers do not keep day and night straight. If they want to drink at noon, they take one, and a lot of them have psychological pressure stacked behind a week of road and need the wine to bleed it off. 2 and 3 to a table, men shouting and gesturing, young adventurers being walked between tables by waitresses, with trays, older ones with arms around each other's shoulders, eating with their hands and spilling more drink than they swallowed. The smell of food woke the worm in my stomach up. I do not like alcohol. I love food. After several days of camp rations and dry road meals, I could have eaten a whole cow. I found an open table, set my pack and the sword beside me, and a waitress brought a menu. I waved her on and ordered a few meat dishes and a jug of fruit juice, without looking too closely. Some weird, specific craving for meat had been sitting at the back of my mouth ever since the white birch fight, and I guessed it was the same engine as the growth spurt. Constitution 6 wants protein. The body has growing to do. While I waited, I pulled up the Adventurer's Handbook in my head and looked at the panel. My strength is 5 for physical force, and explosive output agility 5 for flex and coordination, Constitution 6 for stamina and recovery and the engine in my chest, intelligence 7 for memory and thinking and mental power, perception 5 for senses and intuition, charm 5 for posture and presence. Under skills, my 0-level cantrip Mage Hand is at level 2 with proficiency 15 out of 20, and my first circle spell Magic Missile is at level 1 with proficiency 3 out of 10. Mage Hand jumped a clean 5 points during the white birch fight, from 10 to 15 out of 20, all of it earned in live combat, which confirms what I had already started to think, that practical use builds proficiency much faster than dry drilling. Magic Missile took 3 points from one extraordinary cast against the Hobgoblin, and after that, on the road back, I never dared touch it. The mana cost on a first circle spell is brutal. The last thing I needed was to drain my mana into the dirt and lock up on a forest road, with nothing between me and the dark but a damaged dagger. Right now I sit on 2 spells. With what shopkeeper Glon told me about professionals fresh in my head, I am stuck on a fork. The first step on the mage path is to grind 1 spell to the point where the world begins to guide you. Either Mage Hand or Magic Missile can be the spell. The question is which. Difficulty-wise, Mage Hand is obviously easier. Glon said most mages pick a 0-level cantrip as their foundational spell for the push, because the cantrip is easier to access, easier to cast, lighter on mana, and you can run more reps per day, which raises the odds of crossing the line in a human lifetime. Magic is gate-kept hard, and people without talent burn out before they reach professional. Mage classes get more team slots in adventurer parties for exactly this reason. Scarcity is a kind of currency. The The upside of choosing the harder first circle spell is that the spell you grind into your foundation hardens into your core skill the moment your class rank condenses. Mages can learn other spells after they class, all the way up the circles given talent and time, but the core skill keeps growing alongside the rank, costs less mana, comes out smoother, and shapes the innate talent the class awakens. An archer who takes ranger may awaken precision, eagle eye, or divine power. A mage who pushes a pure attack spell into the foundation tends to awaken something heavy. Between 0-level Mage Hand and First Circle Magic Missile, the core skill answer is Magic Missile. Mage Hand is an auxiliary cantrip, and even among cantrips it carries no real combat weight. Magic Missile is at the other extreme, a pure offensive spell whose destructive power is on the high end even within the first circle. If I push Magic Missile into the foundation, the spell coming out of my hand the day I class will be far above a normal mage's, and the talent that lands on me is likely to be ugly in the right direction. I swallowed. I chose Magic Missile. The core skill defines the whole career. The harder spell hurts more to grind, but I have the Adventurer's Handbook to give me a clean readout on proficiency, which is a luxury most mage hopefuls do not own. As long as I keep practicing, the number does not regress. The priority now is a magic wand. Even the cheapest wand cuts the mana cost of casting and accelerates proficiency growth, which compounds across every session. The food came and almost made me cry. Meat in my mouth, every cell in my body cheering. My body was satisfied. The time vanished into chewing. I'd burped, blanked out behind my eyes, and was nearly asleep on the bench when a gentle voice called me to settle the bill at 2 silver coins and 50 copper coins. I asked, a little dazed, "How much?" The waitress repeated it politely. 2 silver coins and 50 copper coins. A few days ago, Haley covered a meal for 4 at this tavern for 3 silver coins and 40 copper coins, and I was scandalized then. One meal for one of me had landed at almost that number. I was the extravagant one. A single meal at 0.03 of an apartment. My heart bled. She handed me the menu, completely composed, and I looked. Fish and chips, air-dried ham with cheese, thick-cut charcoal grilled steak with salt and olive oil, borscht, and a couple more rounds I added because I was not full the first time. I had ordered everything that hit the table. Adding it up in my head, the total was honest. The stack of empty plates beside me agreed. Out of the tavern, my chest still ached. Income up, consumption up, that is the law. The pace of the upgrade was the problem. I told myself the inexplicable meat craving from earlier had bewitched me. And to be fair, my body felt great. Maybe the dinner paid down a small debt the growth spurt had run up. I called it an investment in myself. It does not hurt. It does not hurt. Current cash on hand, 28 silver coins and 52 copper coins. Greed is a slope. The number looks like a lot until you start spending against it. Hard to go from luxury back to frugality. My desire to earn went up to match. Morning. I came downstairs and Sophia was mopping the lobby. She greeted me as Little Gauss and asked if I wanted breakfast, leaning on the mop. The image of black bread and pickled vegetable soup floated up in my head right next to last night's spread, and I felt the gap between them. There is no going back from steak. I gave her an awkward smile and told her not today, no appetite. Sophia's gaze on my back as I walked out was wounded. I left her at the door doubting her own cooking, which is unfair of me because her cooking is fine. None of her other tenants would have flagged a thing. She is going to fret about it for a week. The morning bell rang and Grey Rock Town woke up. Street stalls lined the road. I spent 4 copper coins on 2 meat pies and told Sophia in my head that I was sorry, but I was a carnivore now. Black bread and vegetable soup were not going to feed the body the Constitution Point had built. The pies were better than they had any right to be. I am not going to admit out loud that the comparison with the black bread made them taste twice as good. The plan for the morning was magic missile drilling. Mage Hand had to go on the shelf and have its usage cut hard. The thing I feared most now was triggering the professional path guidance with the wrong spell. Having a 0-circle cantrip block into my foundation, and spending the rest of my life regretting it. Mage Hand was already at 15 out of 20 at level 2, and I do not know whether level 3, level 4, or some later level is the trigger. After breakfast, I walked out the town gate. There is no room in town to throw blue light at the ground. The plains outside are big enough that the adventurers who train there do not crowd each other. I walked until the next nearest figure was a dot, dropped into an empty patch of grass, and started. I closed my eyes and tried to find the feeling again. Several days had passed since I last cast Magic Missile, and that one had landed under extreme focus. Resting and washing in town had dulled the channel. I called the spell. Blue light flickered in my palm and went out. I had expected that. First circle spells are not friendly the first try. By the experience of Mage Hand drilling, at level 1, time and repetition would get me there. I called it again, and again, and again. Rest. Try again. After enough rounds, I noticed that this spell, unlike Mage Hand, costs mind even on the failures. Mage Hand misses for free. Magic Missile misses with a small but real fatigue in the back of my head. Lucky for me, my intelligence is 7, which means my mental recovery is faster than an ordinary person's. Lying in the grass and warming my face in the sun for a stretch put me back in the chair. Eventually, I felt it again. A breeze moved through, and the same indescribable line of inspiration moved with it. The mana in my body mobilized cleanly, gathered, concentrated in my palms, and as it ran, the ambient magic in the air around me leaned in and got woven into the shape. A magic missile took form in my hand. This time there was no hobgoblin in front of me, so I got to look at it. A clear sphere of energy, pale white skin on the outside, fast currents of mana intertwining inside like braided water. Harmless to me by design, faint pressure in my mind told me I could steer it. I focused, and the missile shifted in my palm by the width of a fingernail. So the control was real. My proficiency was just too low to use it. I closed my fingers around the missile and lobbed it at an empty patch in the middle distance. The instant it left my hand, it accelerated in a straight line, the magic running it up to top speed almost immediately, dragging a long blue halo across the field. The boom came when it hit the ground. The blue energy bloomed open like daytime fireworks. By the time the smoke cleared, what was left was a spiderweb cracked impact crater the diameter of a forearm, a fist-sized concave pit at its center. Magic missile. Success. First blood for the training day. The Adventurer's Handbook chimed in my head and added a proficiency tick. First circle spell magic missile rose to level 1. 4 out of 10. Tired. It was better than the first cast against the hobgoblin. I did not bottom out and lock up. My head was still heavy and full of cotton, and I lay down to wait it out. A successful cast that ate that much mana left maybe 5 units of fatigue against a single failure's 1. Half an hour in the grass before the cotton cleared. The 7 points of intelligence kept paying me back. Ordinary recovery from that state would mean a full night of sleep. For me, it was a long blink. The mana itself was creeping upward day by day too. Not fast, but steady, which is the kind of growth that lets me sleep at night. Still, the pool was not yet big enough for first circle spells at this stage. 1 week into my awakening, the supply had not caught up to what magic missile costs. I asked myself the obvious next question. Can I trim the mana cost of a single cast? The full power magic missile felt like overkill to me even at this skill floor. A lot of mana was spilling on the ground after the work was done. Against a normal goblin, I would bet 10% of full power kills it. Against that hobgoblin, 30 to 50% would have done the job. The rest was wasted. If I could not cut the cost to a tenth, 80 or 90% of full output would still be a win. It would shorten the recovery window between attempts and let me restart drilling sooner. As it stood, each successful cast bought me a 30-minute lie down on the grass, which was no way to grind proficiency. I sat back up after another long rest and gave it a try. Closing my eyes, finding the channel was cleaner this time, the path still warm. I started the cast and then actively cut it the second the mana began to move. Easier to describe than to do. Once a cast begins, the mana flows by a kind of inertia, and stopping it midstream takes real control. My intelligence held me up again. I broke the flow on the first try. The next step was find control. Drop only some of the mana, not all. A spell is essentially a pre-built program. Normal casting only needs you to find the right cue, the right command, and the program runs itself. The hard part of magic is building the program inside your own consciousness in the first place, following the books and the teachings of the older mages. The cost of using a black box program you did not write is that you cannot tune the inputs from the outside. I needed to intercept a slice of the mana the instant the cast launched. The math in my head was simple. The execution was not. How much to skim, when to skim it, how to do it without breaking the spell structure. I cycled through the attempt over and over, failing, resting, refilling, attempting again, until the sun was on the lawn and the evening glow had stained everything orange. By then, I had magic missile down to about 95% output, a 5% skim. It does not sound like much. At the beginning, I had been skimming 1% and watching the cast fall apart on me. 5 was a real step. The direction was right. I just had to keep walking down it. I packed up and walked back to town with an empty stomach and a quiet head. 5 days passed. I was out before dawn and back after dusk, every day, silently practicing. Proficiency on the spell climbed steady. Magic missile reached level 2, with proficiency 1 out of 20. My mana pool grew with it. If I called the cost of an early full-power magic missile 1 standard unit, my pool started those days at about 1 unit, and by the end of the stretch sat at 1.5, a 50% bump. On the cost trim side, I could now hold a magic missile at 60% power, what I started calling a 0.6 missile. With 1.5 units of mana to spend, that was 2 0.6 missiles and a small remainder. The closer I pushed to the floor, the harder the trim got. Magic, like an engine, has a minimum it has to burn to fire at all. I stopped drilling. 5 days of constantly burning and refilling mana and grinding my mind raw was its own kind of torture. I had told myself, after the White Birch Commission, that I would rest. Instead, I had run myself harder. I shook my head at it and smiled, because I knew the fatigue was banked. Every drop of sweat now would be a hand in the fire later. The magic missile in my back pocket gave me a real measure of safety. A 0.6 missile would shred that hobgoblin without trouble, and I could throw it twice. If the night at White Birch came around again, I would not be the panicked kid clawing at the dirt. The pressure under my breastbone eased, the one that had been there since I woke up in this body and figured out where I was. I had wanted to arm myself fast because the world was not kind. Now there was a floor under me. Among low-level adventurers who had not crossed into class, my offense alone was probably in a league of its own. Itching to test. Goblins. Find a few. Try the new tools. Sophia caught me at the door again. Little Gauss. Breakfast. I told her next time I was heading out, and she watched me go without arguing. Magic missile drilling had given me what it was going to give for a while. I was on my way to the Adventurous Guild to look at the board. After level 2, the easy proficiency gains had thinned out, and live combat builds skill far faster than dry casting in a field. On top of that, my monster compendium had been stuck at the same number for days. Total monster kills, 11. Next stage at 50. Drilling magic missile had been sharpening the axe. Time to chop wood. There was also the small problem that my little horde had been quietly bleeding out the whole week. Current cash, 26 silver coins and 15 copper coins. 2 silver coins gone in a few days. Almost all of it food. And that was with me consciously eating at street stalls instead of the Coral Tavern. Even meat at almost every meal should not have eaten that much money. I refused to take the blame. The blame went on the high price of meat in this world. After all this time, you would think technology and production would have made meat a normal thing instead of a small fortune at every meal. The world should reflect on itself. The hunger was not going away anyway. My mana was still expanding daily, my body was still pubertying in slow motion, and the engine wanted protein. If I tried to subsist on vegetables, I would just be sick inside a week. Besides, training was already painful enough, and I was not going to live like an ascetic on top of it. That had never been my life goal. I walked into the guild hall, crowded as always. The morning and the dusk shifts were the busy times, like housewives at the discount supermarket back home, adventurers crowding the boards and milling for anything that looked good. The novelty of the place had worn off me by now. I noticed a few adventurers loitering at the boards, decently dressed, nodding at notices, never actually pulling one. I had seen the same faces every time I came in. I quietly suspect the guild keeps a few on payroll to make the hall look busier than it is, and to nudge the rest of us into snatching commissions before they vanish. Theater. I shook the conspiracy out of my head and read the notices. Gathering commissions were out. Too much aimless time in the forest. No harvesting technique. No preservation experience. Escort gigs. Out. The standing town government monster bounties were paper money. Those zones had been swept clean by adventurers years ago. What I wanted were the civilian posted kill commissions. Bottom-tier monsters like goblins drop nothing the market wants, so the only people who pay to clear them are villagers pooling their coins. People sometimes ask why a village of dozens cannot just deal with a band of a dozen goblins themselves when the math looks favorable. The previous Gauss had wondered the same. After enough conversations in White Birch, I get it. Small monsters in a pack coordinate, which gives them a leg over loose human numbers. The terrain favors them, jungle and lair and broken ground that does not suit a peasant militia. Most importantly, real combat costs blood, and farmers do not carry combat willpower. 1 or 2 might. They will never be able to rally the rest. Me killing goblins is not a counterexample. The body I am in was already a hunter, which puts him near the top of the ordinary person's scale for physical fitness. And the intelligence stat gives me a low-grade version of slow motion in a fight. Magic, weapons, and Haley's team on top of that, and from the outside it looked like a god of war. Take any of those legs away and I am back to a peasant with a sharp stick. Villagers do not have the legs, so they grit their teeth, scrape up a few coins, and hand the problem to the guild. Over the years, it has become the habit of the continent, and I suspect the guild quietly fed that habit on purpose, because no commissions means no guild. I worked the board for a long time and did not find a soft one. What I wanted was a small group, low combat power, under 5 monsters. Those exist, but they are rare. When the threat is small, the villagers do not bother pooling money, and when they do, a bottom-tier adventurer squad sweeps the posting the moment it goes up. Cattle huddle. Predators walk alone. The crowded ground is the squeezed ground. I let my eyes drift to the corner of the hall where the press was densest, the party up wall. Freelancers calling for temporary teammates because not every adventurer carries a fixed squad, and not every commission can be soloed. Exactly the way I had landed on Haley's job last time. By the massive sword statue in the corner, 3 and 4 to a knot, the parties were forming. A red-haired youth was calling for hands to clear slimes out of an underground cave, talking up the cores as the payoff. Slimes are the standard novice introduction to monsters. And ooze, swamp body engulfers that crush you in their grip and corrode anything cheap. Individually weak, easy to beat one-on-one. Dangerous if they stick to your blade. He saw me look and called me black-haired guy and invited me to join. I felt the pull and let it go. Wild underground caves are bad ground for a novice. You never know what else is down there, and if a real predator is between you and the entrance, you do not get back out. I shook my head and apologized. A second adventurer drifted over and asked if I was a swordsman, probably reading the rapier at my hip. I told him I was a mage apprentice. A mage apprentice is a person pushing toward the mage profession. Even calling myself a mage apprentice would not get a real professional to count me as one. Real professionals do their business on the second floor of the guild, not down on the recruitment wall. Plenty of apprentices in the hall like to call themselves warriors, rangers, rogues. The mage in my title cut through anyway. Mage apprentices are rare on the recruitment wall because most are already absorbed into squads. Among full professionals, the class spread is balanced. Among apprentices, mages and priests and warlocks are scarce because the entry threshold is high and ordinary people without family backing cannot reach the skills. Heads turned toward me. A tall, burly young man got around the others and clapped me on the shoulder before any of them could open their mouths. He told me to forget the rotten fish and shrimp around us and join his night owl squad. They were short and mage. Wanted to give it a shot. "Big idiot," somebody yelled from the crowd. "Who are you calling rotten fish and shrimp?" "Forget it," somebody else said. "Do not provoke him." The young man ignored all of it and waited on my answer. I told him honestly that I was not looking for a permanent squad, that I had come in this morning to slot into a temporary team and sharpen up. I controlled my mage hand to lift the rapier at my hip while I said it, as a small proof of profession. He laughed and waved it off. Said temporary was fine. Said even if I had asked to officially join, his squad would not vote yes without watching me work first. He introduced himself as Levin, shield bearer, named his teammates as an archer, an assassin, a swordsman, and a priestess. I followed his finger and looked over. There were 4 of them by the wall. The archer carried a dark longbow and did not react when I looked. The assassin was hooded, and under the cloak I caught the line of a small crossbow at her waist. The swordsman had the look I had pictured for the role. The priestess was sitting hugged up against the wall with a wooden staff in her arms and curious eyes on me. I was tempted. The composition was clean. Long-range archer, flanker, assassin, shield bearer to eat damage, swordsman to put out damage up front, priestess for healing. Even without me, this team could clear most low-level commissions easily. I asked Levin what mission they had taken. He told me not to worry, just 15 goblins, and patted his chest. Pre-professional squad, no missions outside their capacity. Said this kind of job was warm-up for them. They had done it more than a dozen times. He clearly saw me leaning in, and his words came faster. 15 goblins was acceptable. White Birch had been 20 plus and irregular, and we made it out. This squad was clearly a tier above Haley's 3, and they had more bodies. With where my own offense was now, no surprises should mean a clean job. I extended my hand and called him Captain Levin, told him my name was Gauss, and said I was glad to be working with him. Levin shook on it with a brilliant smile. Joining a low-level elite squad to develop in the shade for a stretch was not a bad call. I needed skill proficiency, money, sword reps, and compendium kills, and I could not just walk into the Emerald Forest swinging at random and expect to come home. A fully equipped squad with a priestess for healing was a stable environment, and the people seemed sober. No reckless mission selection. Stable development. Do not be reckless. The rest of the Night Owl squad ran cold compared to Levin. After I introduced myself, the rest gave their names and their preferred weapons and shut up. The priestess stole a couple of glances at me, opened her mouth, found nobody else talking, and chose silence. The rogue in the cloak greeted me in a single sentence, and went back to wiping down her short sword. Until she spoke, I had assumed she was a man. The archer and the swordsman were the quiet sort too. Fair enough. You do not get to demand cheerfulness from a stranger you just bolted onto your team. If the elite framing was real, the cool reception was on brand. It suited me. I am uncomfortable with a stranger turning warm too fast. Levin closed it down. Rest the morning. Combined training in the afternoon. Meet at the guild entrance. Tomorrow at the bell. Gather at the town gate and depart. Earnings on the job distributed by contribution. Understood, Captain. The cloaked woman waved and was the first out the door, and the others peeled off after her. Levin watched me linger and told me not to read them as cold, that they were good people once you earned them, as long as I earned them. He took me to the front desk to register my name on the temporary roster. The Night Owl squad, like any registered party, had paid the guild 50 silver coins to certify as an adventurer squad, and registration came with real benefits. Some commissioning agencies specifically request a registered squad, on the theory that a fixed team with practice synergy beats a hand-pulled temporary one. Affording the 50 silver coin fee is its own proof. Registered squads can promote their squad rank along with the personal rank, which encourages early registration. Recruitment is easier too, because a freelancer staring at competing offers naturally leans toward the registered team. After registration, I said my goodbyes to Levin and went off to pack. The destination was near Mill Village. Not as far as White Birch, but still not a one-day walk. The full cycle, get there, rest, intel, fight, loot, rest, walk back, ran 3 days minimum. I bought dry rations, water skins, spare clothes. I also bought a set of leather armor. I was going to need one eventually anyway. 15 silver coins. Pricier than I liked. The defense was a real step above my cloth armor, with weight and flexibility about the same. The leather armor shop took my old second-hand cloth set back for 50 copper coins, which had cost me a full silver coin not long ago, and had only been worn through one job, where I had been ambushing a lone goblin and barely tested it. Walking out with the depreciation in my pouch, I suspected the squinting middle-aged shop owner would scrub the cloth set up and put it right back on the shelf for a silver coin. The new leather armor felt good, layered hardened lamellar over the chest and shoulders, supple at the joints, snug against me when I tightened the straps. The reasoning I gave myself was that better defense meant lower injury risk against goblins. I will not admit the small extra reason was that the rest of the squad was clearly well kitted, and I did not want to show up to the afternoon drill in dirty secondhand cloth and look like a beggar standing next to them. Pragmatism. Strictly pragmatism. The afternoon drill ran in the open ground outside town. Joint drills are routine after a new member joins, and any captain who takes the job seriously keeps a regular cadence even without one. Drills are basic technical exchange. The newcomer demonstrates abilities, skills, role, strengths, weaknesses. The rest do the same in return. The point is mutual readability. In real combat, the cool novel plot move, where one teammate hides his true card until the dramatic reveal, is not cool. It is reckless. Teammates who do not know your abilities cannot coordinate with you, and miscoordination means somebody catches a friendly blade in the back. We gathered at the guild entrance. By the time I got there, the other 5 were already standing with their gear on, armor and weapons in place. Levin and the swordsman Doyle were the conspicuous ones. Both wore black metal scale armor, overlapping iron plates layered like fish scales, gauntlets and greaves on the limbs, leather jacket worn underneath. Beside Levin lay a large dark brown oak shield with metal-wrapped edges, heavy and serious. I have to admit, the gear made them look good. Scale armor on a shop wall and scale armor worn by a man with the shoulders to fill it are two different things. The other 3, Archer Oliver, Rogue Manhwa, and the Priestess Daphne, were in lighter leather armor like mine. The condition and fit looked higher quality than my brand new set, but they were the same kind of gear. Looking at the loadouts, I was glad I had upgraded. Standing next to them in secondhand cloth would have made us look like extras from different paintings stitched onto the same canvas. Even in the new leather, I was still the visibly poorest in the lineup. The others gave me a glance and looked away without lingering. Whether that was them looking down on me, or them simply not caring, or them being polite, was hard to read. Probably a mix. Even being called a mage was not going to buy me deference here. They had no way of judging my strength yet, and adventurers do not change their tone over a title. Strength buys respect. Period. I had to admit I was a novice adventurer with one job under his belt, and even with what I had cleared from the last commission, my account was nowhere near these veteran low-level adventurers. Counting the life magic stone hanging under my shirt, I might be the wealthiest in the team, but I did not have the eye to price their gear, and there might be a rich apprentice quietly carrying a fortune in the gauntlets. From another angle, teammates with their own money is good news for me. The price required to tempt a rich man into a knife in the back is higher, and on a low-stakes job no rich man bothers. The probability of being sold out by the team drops. Levin slung his great shield onto his back and announced we were heading out for combined training. We walked toward the edge of town. Curious looks followed us through the streets. Compared to actual professionals, our gear and aura were nothing, but among low-level adventurers we were elite, and the variety of equipment and the uniform pace made ordinary people respect and fear us without thinking about it. They cleared us a path on instinct. A team this equipped could do real harm if it turned, and the average townsperson would have no way to resist. We left through the gate and walked a stretch further. I watched the others on the road. Levin's claim of elite was not a brag. He was wearing a full set of metal scale armor and a heavy oak great shield slung on his back and walked like a steady breeze. Real strength and real stamina. With my constitution at 6 and weeks of meat in my diet, I had grown up in a second wave, much stronger than the old Gauss, but next to Levin I still felt thin. If Levin had a panel, I would put both his strength and his constitution at 6, and strong 6s at that. Doyle was strong and steady too, not at Levin's level, partly a build difference. Levin being well over 1.90 m and Doyle a hair over 1.80 m. Oliver, Manhwa, and Daphne were not heavy strength roles, but their road stamina was clean. After a long walk, none of them looked the least bit tired. Even Daphne, the most delicate looking of the group, was still walking light and brisk. I had been letting myself feel a little proud about my own rate of growth, watching them put me back in my place. There are plenty of strong people in this world. The Night Owl squad was unranked, and every single member was solid with almost no obvious gap in fitness. Experienced adventurers patched their gaps. Real professionals must be terrifying. I let the thought sit and dropped into step next to Daphne. In her hand was a small wand of unfamiliar pale wood. I looked at it for a while and finally asked, "Was that her magic wand?" She blinked, startled out of her sightseeing, and asked me to repeat. I asked again. She told me no, that it was just a piece of wood suited to conducting mana that helped her cast divine arts, that it did not count as a real staff or magic wand, and was strictly a base material. She had no instinct to hide it. I had picked her on purpose, because besides Levin she was the easiest to approach, and back in the morning I had read curiosity off her gaze. Probably the magic-type kinship. She said she was currently in the process of syncing with the wood, and after the sync was complete, she would embed it with a magic stone of the right attribute, and have a specialist craft it, and only then would it officially become a staff. A staff made that way would have the best compatibility with her, better than buying one ready-made off a rack. She added that she was saving for a life magic stone, that the cheapest one cost 2.5 gold coins, and that they were heartbreakingly expensive. My heart skipped a beat. Under the cloth at my collarbone, the life magic stone hung warm against my chest. 2.5 gold coins. Shopkeeper Glon had estimated mine at 2 gold coins, which was honest given that he had been out of the professional life for a long time and was a blacksmith, not a gem expert. She asked what was wrong, seeing me silent. I waved it off. Nothing. I was not going to blurt it. We had only just met, and flaunting wealth at a stranger is bad form. There was also no benefit in saying it. I was not going to sell it cheap to Daphne in exchange for a favor when she needed a staff and I needed a magic wand. The gap between a spellcaster with a wand and a spellcaster without one is too wide to wave away. From her tone, the central component of a magic wand is a magic stone of the matching attribute, which means, even if my future wand did not need a life magic stone, I could trade this one to someone for the magic stone I did need. Bartering magic stones to magic stones cuts the spread that gold coins force on every transaction. In other words, until I found the right trading partner, I just needed to earn enough money to cover a base material and the craftsman's fee. I had been about to ask Daphne the price of a base material when we reached the training ground, so I put the question back in my pocket and decided to find another moment. The first round of the drill started with me. Their eyes converged on me at once. I told them the spell I would be demonstrating was Mage Hand and called it. Magic Hand activation was already smooth for me. The mana woven shape took on the air in front of me, an invisible magical hand. Daphne the cleric could probably perceive the energy. The others could not see anything specifically, but they could vaguely sense a peculiar feeling in the moment after I spoke the name. A sixth sense kind of feeling. Since the rest could not see the hand, I had it pick up a thin sword and wave it through the air to show the effect. It looked weak, Doyle said, almost reflexively. He was measuring against his own arm. From his angle, the strike looked limp. Levin's eyes lit up the moment he saw it. He told the group it was a very powerful spell. Doyle blinked at him, openly surprised. Levin counted off the uses on his fingers. Mage Hand could scout traps, could remote trigger Mava's mechanisms. He asked me how strong my Mage Hand was. About 10 pounds, I told him. A little small, he said, but enough. He asked if it could hold powder. It should, I told him. I had not specifically tried. I brought the hand down, scooped up a fistful of soil and dust, and let it sift onto the open palm of the hand. A thin layer settled across the invisible surface, and stayed. I could shake it off whenever I wanted, but it would hold. Oliver leaned in and said, "It really is a hand," half curious. Magic up close was still rare for them. Levin clapped once and called for Mava to share some of her specially prepared poison powder with me when we had a moment. The rest of the squad caught on at once. Poison powder plus Mage Hand, even if the form gave itself away in the air, could be sprinkled onto a monster's eyes from above and slap a debuff and a control onto it before the swords reached it. Against soft defense monsters, 10 pounds of force on a poison dagger from above could even break through. He said they would work out specific coordination methods with me after watching what Mage Hand could really do. Auxiliary, sure, but inside a coordinated team an auxiliary that wide opens whole tactics. Doyle and the others were looking at me with warmer eyes now. Even Doyle, who carries the swordsman's faith in muscle and never had much use for tricky magic, had to admit that mages sometimes felt more dangerous than honest warriors. He did not, absolutely did not, want to take a face full of poison from a clear sky in the middle of a fight, or a hidden dagger between the shoulder blades. There is no way to guard against everything mid-combat. He looked at me with a sliver of wariness sliding under the new respect. Mages, all insidious, all terrifying. Levin was about to call the next demo when he caught me looking like I wanted to add something. He asked what. I told him I knew another spell. The faces did a small synchronized double take. There was more. Quasi-professionals like them rarely carry more than one skill because energy, time, and resources are limited, and most who do branch are warrior types who pick up a side technique for extra coverage. A mage carrying two was unusual. Daphne, their own cleric, had mastered only the 0-level cantrip life support, which stabilized a wounded person so the injury did not deteriorate, after which she could treat with medical tools. The stronger the cleric, the closer life support could pull a dying person back from the edge. Even the team's healer ran on one spell. I did need to use magic missile in the field later anyway to grow proficiency. If I did not show it now and pulled it out mid-fight, the surprise would just be awkward. The second spell I have mastered, I told them, is called magic missile. They mouthed the name silently to themselves, almost as one. I activated the magic before they could think about it. A bright blue orb of light condensed and formed in the air in front of me. At level 2, I no longer needed my hand on it. The air around the orb seemed to register its presence. The wind in the field started to drift toward it slowly. I told them to step back, that the power might be a bit much, waited for them to clear a safe distance, and then locked my consciousness onto an empty patch of ground in the distance. The next moment, magic missile launched. It accelerated as the thought flashed across my mind, ramped to top speed in the blink of an eye, and drew a brilliant beam of light through the air. At the end of the beam, the ground met it. The boom was the heavy, dense kind that comes from a hard object hammering earth. Clods of soil and grit splattered out across the field. A column of dust and smoke shook loose, and a faint tremor moved through the ground under our boots. When the dust settled, a spiderweb cracked impact crater the diameter of a forearm had appeared, with a fist-sized depression at its center. So strong, Doyle muttered, swallowing hard. The rest of them came back to themselves at the same time. Their faces toward me had finished turning over. They had not been ready for a mage Levin had casually plucked off the guild floor to carry this kind of power. The output looked nothing like a low-level adventurer who had not yet stepped onto the professional path. The missile had only hit the ground and made that crater. If it had hit a body, the body would be dead or crippled. At that speed, you would not dodge. They stared at the crater. Their hearts were palpitating and the air had gone quiet under the slow-falling dust. After my demos, especially Magic Missile, the squads bearing toward me shifted in a very short window. Nobody said it out loud. The looks just carried more weight. During the individual demos and the team tactical drills that followed, everybody put in extra effort. I had set a bar, and nobody wanted to be the one looking small under it. I sighed at it, privately. Strength is respected anywhere. Even a taciturn strong person never gets ignored. A path lined with flowers and applause. I also kept the perspective. Strong and weak are relative. The damage on Magic Missile let me slot into the team as the tactical core, the one who lands the killing blow, because I was at least a tier above the others on burst damage. Put me in a room of professionals and I would be roadside grass. A first circle spell from an unclassed mage apprentice might not even match a zero circle cantrip from a professional, and professionals burn less mana to cast. My ultimate is their basic. Glon had told me that after a mage condenses the class rank, the mana quantity goes up and the mana quality refines, and the same spell hits harder than before. Once I class, the number of usable enhanced magic missiles per encounter will rise, instead of the current ceiling of 200.6 missiles or one full-strength missile in a short window. Across the field, the others were still clustered around me at the end of the drill. Levin stood off to one side, watching, exhaling slow. He had a quiet trick he never advertised. He had a kind of intuition. The intuition had saved his life more than once. Earlier that morning at the Adventurer Hall, when he passed me in the crowd, the intuition had pinged hard. The intuition had pinged hard. Standing in the press of bodies, I had carried a sense of detachment to him, a crane in a flock of chickens. He had moved on me before I had even called myself a mage, because he had already read that I was not simple. That was why the invitation had come fast. The squad had not been recruiting before he saw me. That was also why the rest had been cool to me at first. He had brought a stranger in without consulting them, and they had a right to be reserved. He could not explain his intuition to his teammates. Now that I had shown power beyond a low-level adventurer and earned the squad's acknowledgement, the chest under his armor felt a little lighter. Outcome was good. The only remaining problem for him was how to talk me into joining the squad for real. After half a day with me, he had read me, and from beginning to end, no matter whether the team was cold or warm to me, my face had carried the same faint, unchanging smile. I could take whatever the squad threw at me, which, in his read, made me the most aloof of them all. Morning. The bell struck through Greyrock Town, slow and clear. Sophia in the lobby looked at me coming downstairs and asked, curious, if I was up so early today. I told her I had a mission, that I had arranged it with the team. I checked my equipment and luggage one more time, confirmed nothing was missing, and stepped out the door. Sophia, I am leaving. I will be back in a few days. Have a safe trip, she told me. Be careful on the job. She had already learned that I had switched professions to adventurer, and she was worried. Adventurer is a dangerous job. You never know when a young man who left home to make a living ends up dead in a field. If something happened to me, besides her, the unrelated innkeeper, no one would know where to look. Her chest hurt at the thought, a little, in the way that does not have any place to land. She had no standing to interfere with the choice. The most she could do was bless it. She had also noticed, week over week, that my body and my spirit had been turning better, different from the year past. Maybe little Gauss had finally found a real goal in life. I bought meat pies at a street stall and walked toward the town gate eating. Morning, Doyle called from behind. Morning, I told him back. He offered me beef jerky and I waved him off with my mouth full, telling him I already had a pie. Up ahead, on the side of the road before the gate, Levin's tall outline stood by a flatbed cart hitched to a pack horse. Doyle dropped his luggage, armor, and weapons onto the cart without asking. I blinked at it. Levin caught the look and waved me over. This was the squad's pack horse cart for the gear. Load up. I added my luggage and my leather armor to the pile. Levin's great shield and scale armor, Doyle's greatsword and armor, plus pots, cooking utensils, food, tents, and miscellaneous living supplies all rode there too. They had prepared well. With 6 bodies, gambling on a last-minute caravan ride was not a clean plan. Even if a caravan picked us up on the way out, the way back would not be a guaranteed lift, and neither Levin nor Doyle could march a day in heavy armor without a wagon. The pack horse cart was the answer. Bought or rented, I did not know. The rest of the squad arrived at the meeting point soon after, offloaded their gear onto the cart, and Levin gave the signal. The group left Greyrock Town traveling light. The wooden wheel hubs creaked on the road. The team moved at a steady pace. Whoever ran out of legs would sit on the cart for a stretch and trade back in. The whole experience was much better than what I had been bracing for. I made a mental note to buy a horse of my own once I could afford one, so that whether it was my own load or a future team's load, the horse could carry it. Last time, Walking back to Grey Rock Town from White Birch Village under a full pack, I had almost died from exhaustion. Fine for the first hour, brutal by the third, stopping every short stretch to rest, dragging trophies and parcels by the rope. 2 full days, blistered soles and constitution at 6. Traveling light was a different world. On the road, I was absorbing experience off Levin the way a sponge takes water. Adventuring is not the game I knew in my past life, where a teleport puts you on the mission tile and the work begins. In reality, low-level adventurers spend most of their time on the road, which makes the prep work in town the most critical part of the job. Higher-class professionals probably do this differently, but I cannot reach them yet, so it does not matter. I was quietly stacking strength for the growth ahead. I had already asked Daphne about the price of a wand base material, and it was a heavier number than I had expected. Quality on base materials varies. Holly, elder, lightning-struck wood, peach, hawthorn. Not every plant of those species works either. The craftsman has to pick the very few branch segments where the grain conducts mana cleanly, which is why the floor on base material runs 70 silver coins or more. The expensive ones cross above 10 gold coins, more than the magic stone meant to sit in the core of the wand. Manhwa came back out of the tree shadows the same way she went in, almost without sound, and crossed back into our circle in the gap between 2 breaths. The Night Owl squad turned their heads as one. Levin asked how the scouting went. Manhwa pulled a strip of tan parchment from inside her jerkin, knelt and spread it flat on the stone in the middle of us. She had scribbled the map with symbols and tick marks while she was out there, a rogue's shorthand, and the squad leaned in over it. This was the upside of having a rogue apprentice on a team. Manhwa was assassin and scout in one body. A rogue's frontal combat ceiling is not as high as a warrior's or a mage's, and on a casual look, her contribution can read thin, but the off-front toolkit is unmatched. She knew every trick of concealment and stealth. Her build and footwork let her climb, scout, search, set and disarm traps, and pick locks where the rest of us would have to brute force the job. In a fight, she preferred a plan to a swing, a precise stab to a weak point over an honest exchange of blows. A very specific profession. Even at the apprentice level, her stealth alone was already load-bearing for this team. Back to the map. She laid out what she had seen in a few sentences. 12 rough squares for the buildings of the village. The job site was an abandoned ruin not far off, and a small band of goblins had moved in onto the bones of it. The ruin sat close enough to Mill Village that the village had posted a commission with the Adventurers Guild before the Greenskins worked up the nerve to raid. Knit the threat before it got tall enough to swing. Numbers between 15 and 22, she said, with some inside buildings she could not get a clean count on, scattered with her marks on each square. Weapons mostly stone spears, wooden clubs, wooden shields, and steel blades. 4 of them carried bows. Levin nodded along and asked if she had seen any leader individuals. Manhwa told him no. Good, he said. Then we ran the prearranged plan. He told the squad to gear up and ambush at the marked spot on the map, and asked Manhwa whether she could make a small noise without rousing the whole nest, enough to peel off a portion of the goblins for a free first kill. She agreed. Even if the lure failed, Levin added, head to head we still had the muscle for this nest. Just keep an eye on the archers. Understood. No one had a counter to add. We helped each other into our armor in silence. As the temp on this team, I had nothing to contribute to the planning. The squad worked off years of shared cadence, and this job was not difficult on paper. I was here to learn how a real low-level elite adventurer team moved. We had pushed in late the night before, found a defensible spot, and slept clean. Morning came with all of us full of energy. I strapped on the leather armor, the bracers, the greaves, and gave the rapier a few practice thrusts on the spot to warm up. I had been drilling sword forms on my own over the past stretch. No swordsman to coach me, but enough discipline to grind basics. And my thrusts no longer looked like a man stabbing at a fly. A rapier still slashes and parries, but tactically it lives on the thrust, and it asks for speed and flex from the hand on the grip. My natural footwork was not where it needed to be, but I had a cheat. The moment I pushed into the brain overload state, with 7 points of perception laying every detail flat in front of me, the low-grade bullet time clicked on, and my hands matched what the rapier was built for. Doyle finished strapping his scale armor with his teammates' help and finally had the bandwidth to glance around. His eyes caught me darting in short steps with thrusts, and a question mark practically lit up over his head. He had clocked the rapier before, but a melee blade on a mage usually means an emergency-only sidearm, and he had filed it away as that. The serious warm-up did not fit the file. He clearly wondered if I was actually planning to close, and whether I was really a mage at all. Then his own pre-fight checklist pulled him back to his own shoulders. I let him wonder. He would see it. We moved to the ambush ground. This is the gap between a hardened low-level team and a green one. Against goblins, our group could have crashed through the door, but Levin still set the trap and split them up. He told me on the walk over that even when the head-on works, head-on bleeds stamina, and in the open country you cannot guarantee what shows up next. Even on a road that humans have paved, a club and blade pack of monsters can spill out of the brush. Manage your fuel. Keep a reserve. The reserve is your second life. Manhwa slipped into the dark and toward the ruin. She moved like an old cat. We found cover and waited. Soon a string of small footsteps came back, not hers, 6 chest-high greenskins drawn by the noise she had made. The lead goblin pulled up short with a delighted little jerk and waved his companions over. Under a tree in the open just ahead of them, a gray rabbit was twitching on the ground in a smear of blood, kicking out its last few seconds. The goblins jabbered over the rabbit, then crept toward it as a cluster, cautious, eyes scanning around them. Stupid in some ways, but cunning in others. Even with fresh meat right in front of them, they did not break formation and rush. Before the cohesion of the pack finally snaps, even a goblin troop can hold a workable discipline. That was the worst of them. Loose pack discipline. I was already crouched, Mage Hand silently called and waiting. Scent was the leakage we were worried about, so the others had set up further back outside the spell's 10-meter casting cone. I was the only one inside it, and Miva had already buried my hide and masked the scent of my hide before she went on. The 6 goblins closing in did not catch anything off. They reached the rabbit. The lead goblin, the biggest of them, picked up a stone and threw it toward the rabbit to check for hidden teeth. The stone landed beside it with a dull thump and nothing answered. The pack relaxed. They scanned a few more meters in every direction, found nothing alive, and crowded under the tree. The lead goblin grabbed the rabbit by the neck with both yellow-clawed hands, an excited, cruel smile pulling up at the corners of its mouth, drool sliding off its thick lower lip, and choked the last twitch out of the small body. The pack jumped around the kill, jabbering. Easy meat made them giddy. Goblins are omnivores. They do not get meat every day. A faint click of the tripped mechanism cut the celebration. The goblins all jerked their heads up toward the sound. What they saw was a wide capture net dropping fast above them. My mage hand had pulled the trigger, the release counterweight had dropped, and the magnets along the rim sucked the net down at speed. By the time the lead goblin's instinct said run, the net was already on their skulls. They huddled tight in panic, the worst possible reaction, and the net swallowed them whole, the closing pouch mechanism drawing the rim shut as the magnets clicked together. Then the iron spikes laced along the net bit. The goblins screamed in chorus, jerking and writhing, and every jerk drove the spikes deeper into their flesh. The more they thrashed, the tighter it pulled. Layered on top, the paralyzing poison Miva had brushed onto every spike began to seep in. I almost laughed. Was it really this easy? Miva's mechanism had outperformed what I had braced for. 6 goblins that could have meaningfully bled the squad in a fair fight had been bagged in a single trigger pull, but I clocked a few of them gritting through the pain and starting to saw at the net with their weapons. Cap is short. The rest of the squad were stepping out of cover and starting toward us, but they were further back than I was. I moved first. Rapier out, I closed on the writhing knot of goblins and started picking my shots. I had no feeling toward goblins, including pity. The rapier in my hand was a fish-killing knife, cold and quick. Every thrust hit a vital, every withdrawal pulled out a hole leaking thick, foul-smelling blood, and the Adventurer's Handbook updated me without asking. Total monsters killed, 12, 13, 14, all the way to 17. 6 bagged goblins converted into 6 entries on the cumulative kill count, and the next milestone at 50 pulled noticeably closer. There was something else too, or maybe I was imagining it. After the 6th goblin went down, the rapier in my hand felt smoother and more in tune. The added coordination read like I had practiced for several extra days out of thin air. By the time I straightened, the others were just arriving at the trap. No emergency, no need to sprint, and once they saw me already finishing the slaughter, they slowed further. My rapier was less likely to damage Miva's net than their bigger blades. Levin shook his head with a tilted smile and told me, half joking, that we did not split mission rewards by kill count, and that even though I deserved credit for triggering the mechanism, the 6 goblins did not all belong to me. I told him I understood, my face flat, my chest privately humming. The credit I actually wanted was already mine, and my share of the commission was not going to be lighter. I told him I had just wanted to use the goblins to drill swordplay. It even sounded reasonable. In private, I was very pleased. Compared to the goblins I had clawed through at White Birch Village, these 6 had been gifts. I made a quiet note. With the right traps, even a man working alone could clean out a small goblin nest without injury. My own trap work was small-scale animal traps. The large capture net was a rogue's craft, and I would have to learn that skill from Mava. As a half-baked hunter, I was clearly behind the rogue apprentice on this. That train of thought rolled into another one. Now I understood why Mava, who did not talk much and did not work the social side of the squad, sat as steady on this team as a mountain. Every team needs that person. The one who scouts intel, builds the traps and the poisons, and lays down ranged or flanking pressure with a dagger and a one-handed crossbow when the swords meet. The gloomy little woman under the cloak might be the actual core of the Night Owl squad. I glanced at her. She had drifted back to the edge of the circle without a sound. I made another quiet note. When I built my own squad, I needed a strong rogue. The picture of picking up free kills like this for the rest of my career put a smile on my face that I did not catch in time. Doyle, who was watching me from the side, twitched. He was clearly doing some math behind his eyes. A few resistance, 0 goblins do not warrant a smile this happy. Was this guy Gauss a psychopath? Or did he have some kind of buried hatred for greenskins? Doyle's imagination ran loose for a couple of seconds before he reeled it in. Levin cut the moment off, calling everyone to brace for the head-on. The rest of the nest would be here soon. The capture net, the footsteps, the wailing, all of it had been more than enough to bring them. I took a breath and put the wandering thoughts away. Miva had counted between 15 and 22. 6 off. 9 to 16 incoming. A loud, disorderly thump of feet rose in the distance, and a goblin column rolled into the clearing. 5 wooden shield and club goblins formed the front, 3 stone spears behind them, 2 with steel blades, and at the back the 4 archer goblins fanning for shooting lanes. 14 in total. No oversize of normals like the one at White Birch Village, but visibly tighter discipline, with a rudimentary division of labor. The 4 archers in particular were a threat we could not casually ignore. This was what a nest of nearly 20 goblins was supposed to look like in the field. The White Birch nest had been 2 small bands lashed together too fast, anchored by a single oversized specimen, with no time to grow real cohesion. This one had grown. Levin sketched the call from cover. Maiva and Oliver, the archer goblins are yours. We handle the front. If you need it, I added, I can drop in long range with magic missile. And besides, I wanted live fire practice on the spell. In honest terms, my standing role on this team aside from the killing shot magic missile was free agent, and stealing kills counts as support if you tilt your head right. Good, Levin said. Thank you. Brace. Kill them all. He slammed his oak shield down in front of him and the squad clicked into combat shape. The fight broke open fast. Levin from the front, shield horizontal, threw a roar and bull rushed the goblin formation. He carried his bulk like a sprinter, not the slow lump his height would suggest, and faint white air streamed off the edge of his shield as he came in. He hit like a fully loaded truck, the oak shield first, and Doyle, me, and Daphne followed in his wake. The crash was a thump that I felt through the soles of my boots. The 5 wooden shield goblins at the front took the full body of his shield charge and went off their feet. He swung the shield through the impact and they flew. Watching it from behind him, I had to give him real respect. Shield charge in real combat with bodies in the way looked nothing like the drill version. With feedback on the other end, it was an explosive move. The 5 wooden shield goblins tumbled in the dirt, wailing, clubs and round shields spinning loose. They were already reaching back for their gear when Doyle leaped out from Levin's flank and brought his longsword down on the lead one. A flash of cold steel and a horrible diagonal cut opened from the goblin's left shoulder all the way down across its body, the wound deep enough to drain the strength out of it in a single beat. It flew backward and did not get up. Fast, I thought. The 5 wooden shielders had been broken open by Levin's skill and were not really fighting anymore. My stamina was solid, but my burst was not at Doyle's level, and by the time Doyle had already killed one, I had only just closed. The goblin in front of me had its back to me, scrabbling for its club and round shield, trying to push itself up off the ground. I did not need to be invited. I planted my hips, drove from my arm through my wrist, and drove the rapier straight into the small of its back. The tip went through low back, then muscle, then guts, then lower belly, like punching through tofu and then through resistance behind it. The blade came out the front. The goblin shrieked, full panic. The sound cut high and short. I twisted the rapier inside the wound, snapped it back out, and a thick churn of blood and brown matter spilled out behind the steel. Another one. Goblin killed ×1. Total monster kills, 19. Easy kills, made me happy. They should make anyone happy. Before I could pick another, a stone spear came at me out of a gap in the line. One of the spear goblins had stepped around Levin while he was busy with the steel blades. The spear was a stone head hammered onto a crooked shaft, but the thrust had wind behind it and the angle was clean for my ribs. My brain dropped into overdrive on its own. The world slowed. I was not the boy who had just landed in this world and could only sneak stab a single goblin and run. I sidestepped the spear, drew the air out from under its lunge, and on the back end of its missed thrust, with the goblin's old momentum bled out, and its new momentum not yet built, I called Mage Hand and grabbed its shoulder and yanked. In a clean stance, the yank would have done very little. Caught in the gap where the spear's force had emptied, and the next motion had not arrived, the yank pulled the goblin into a stumble. Its center of gravity went sideways. I stepped into the gap and put the rapier through its lower abdomen, twisted it, pulled it back out. Smooth motion, no wasted step. Goblin killed ×1, total monster kills, 20. I was getting better at this. My eyes flicked to the right just in time to see Doyle hammer a shielded goblin off its feet and send it rolling in my direction. I started moving before he could finish. Let me help you, I called. I reached the goblin before he did, planted, and put the rapier through its heart while it was still on its back trying to get up. Goblin killed ×1. Total monster kills, 21. Doyle blinked when he saw it land. I could read the thought right off his face, that something about this guy was a little off, but he shrugged it down and turned for the next swing. He told me thanks without breaking stride. Less than 10 minutes from the shield's first crash to the last green body going still. I looked at the scattered green-skinned corpses and severed limbs around me and let out a measured breath. The fight had been disturbingly clean. Maybe this was what teamwork actually felt like. I could get used to this. Besides the assist I had stolen off Doyle, I had also put a magic missile through an archer goblin from range when it had bothered to pick me out as its target. In a quick frontline battle, leaning into the openings Levin and Doyle made for me, I had picked up 5 goblins clean. Total monster kills now stood at 23. Halfway to 50. The only real moment of danger in the whole exchange had been the parting shot from the last archer. I had ducked under it, the arrow grazed my bracer, and my new leather armor held. The archer ate my retaliatory magic missile a breath later. Once I added up the math, the rest of it made sense. After the ambush, we had walked into a real fight with 14 goblins. 6 of us against 14 of them, with Daphne the lowest in frontal output, and everyone else carrying an attribute above an ordinary person, leather armor or better, sharper weapons. In proper maintenance, the gap was not one that 14 against 6 could close. Once the bodies had stopped twitching, we rested a beat and then cleaned up the field with the steady boredom of professionals. First, the quest item, each of us pulling out a dagger and a small knife and cutting the large pointed left ear off each goblin. The motions were ritual. Who knew how many goblin ears these veterans had taken in their lives? The small ear bag swelled until it was stuffed. The unit price on the commission was generous, 1 silver coin per ear, 20 silver coins total, a little over 3 silvers a head. It does not sound like a lot until you flip the math around. That cut was enough to keep me at Sophia's Inn eating and sleeping easy for 2 months. 3 days out, most of it spent walking, and the actual working time, the scouting, the trap, and the frontline work, added up to less than 2 hours. Work 3 days, lie flat 2 months. The day labor crowd from my last life would have run at this with their lunch pails in hand, even if it bled now and then. The base reward was only the headline. Goblin loot and weapons would sell for a chunk more on top of it, and that part of the income was a quiet fold and nobody listed on the commission board. The one real downside was that the 2 steel blades, the most valuable items the nest had, were both in deplorable maintenance. They would not fetch their potential. There was nothing to be done about that. Goblins, especially small settlement nests like this one, never look after their iron. The vast majority of goblins live in caves and swamps because they like damp underground environments by nature, and damp underground environments are death on iron weapons. A low-level pack has no anti-rust oil, no maintenance materials, and the steel they pick up off battlefields ends as scrap fast. We started collecting loot in the ruin proper. Before long, the clearing had a small pile in it. Miva walked through and culled the trash, leaving only what the cart could carry and what was actually worth carrying. 20 to 30 silver coins on the pile, she estimated. For a nest of 20 that had begun to consolidate raiding capability, the trove they had stacked up was respectable. I ran the addition under my breath. With the commission, about 6 or 7 silver coins per head. Decent. Not on the order of White Birch Village, which had been a lucky strike, but routine adventuring cannot bank on rare magic items every run. This was the model of stable, safe income. Low risk, fair return for our weight class. A dozen runs like this would buy me a house in Grey Rock Town. By the time we finished the field work, it was almost noon. The before and after of a fight took much longer than the fight itself. Faces were relaxed. The commission was effectively complete. Daphne was treating Doyle's scrapes off in a quiet corner. The rest of us were maintaining our gear and getting ready to eat. It was here, finally, that I noticed Maeva had taken her hood down. Under the shoulder-length black hair, her ears came to a point that was not a human ear. She felt the look and turned her head. She asked what was wrong. I asked what was with her ears. She told me easily that she had a very faint trace of elf bloodline, and then went back to her pack to find food. No invitation to follow up. That explained the agility. Elves carry their bloodline like a built-in patch, and even a faint strain shows up in the gate. Among sentient peoples, elves run very strong. Long-lived, magic affinity, sharper senses, innate stealth, a gift with the bow, with their only weakness being a low reproductive rate. Maybe that was why humans, with our middling racial talents, had run past them and built kingdoms across the continent. We did not head back that afternoon. The morning's fight had still spent some fuel, but the bigger reason was timing. Even with a clean afternoon start, we would not have made Grey Rock Town before dark, and the pack horses needed a real rest after the haul out. We camped in the ruin and waited for morning. With nothing to do, I wandered the ruin in the afternoon and looked at it properly. The decay was thorough, walls and interiors throttled with weeds, a long abandonment. It got strange when I started counting damage. A handful of buildings had intact main structures, but most of them looked as if their roofs had been peeled, with huge holes punched straight down through floors and into basements, as if something had hit them from above. The village square had craters in it, pockmarked like the surface of the moon. So either someone had wrecked this place on purpose, or a meteor shower had taken it apart. The more I walked, the more I leaned toward the first reading, and the more I leaned toward it, the harder it was to fit into my head. If it was artificial, whoever had done it had been a very tall power, creating ordnance comparable to an artillery barrage for my last life with one body. That was the kind of ceiling individual professionals could reach in this world. I swallowed. The fear and the longing climbed up the same throat. One day I would be able to do that too. The walk back to Grey Rock Town was without incident. I completed the second commission of my life. submitted the mission, collected the reward, sold the loot, split the take, and the wage earner crew did not even pretend to want to linger. We disbanded in front of the guild on the spot. The job had not been hard, but the road exhaustion was real. None of us had bathed for days, and the squad had a uniform smell. I counted my cut again, 7 silver coins and 15 copper coins, and put the purse away pleased. Cash on hand, 19 silver and 30 copper. The next stretch was going to be frugal. I had spent 10 silver coins on the rapier and 15 silver coins on the leather armor, both advanced investments in not dying, and now I had to earn the returns. The plan was to keep riding with Levin's Night Owl squad for a stretch and grind the small treasury back up. The base material for a magic wand alone was 70 silver coins minimum. Not that I was just along for the ride. The Night Owl squad and I were mutually useful. My magic missile sat on the team's table as a trump card on a level with Daphne's life support, and even when it did not deploy on a job, having it in the bag made the team breathe easier. A hot bath at the bathhouse. A clean man walking back to Sophia's inn. Under a fading sky. Sophia was about to close the door when she caught the familiar shape of me coming up the dim street. She set whatever she was doing aside and pulled the door open again, calling me little Gauss and waving me in fast. Coming up the street and seeing her shape lit gold under the lamp, with the generous figure waving me home, I felt a small warm thing under my ribs. This was the feeling of coming home after a stretch of work. It struck me then, sideways, that the boy whose body I was wearing had a real home somewhere, and I had inherited his memories of it. Thinking of home pulled up something tangled. Maybe one day when I had the time and the strength, I would go take a look. I shoved it down, set my face back to ordinary, and put a small smile on for Sophia. I told her I had finished a job clean. She asked, worried whether I had run into anything dangerous. Just a few goblins, I told her. Nothing serious for me. Then I caught myself and added that if she ever ran into them, she should be careful. That monsters are monsters even when they are small. She told me to relax, that she had no adventurer-grade nerve. Then she asked if I wanted a late supper on the house. I started to wave it off, said I had already eaten, then folded under her look and admitted I would have a little. The next day I overslept again. Reasonable, on day 2 after a finished commission. I did not get out of bed until noon. Sophia was at the front counter with her chin on her hand, watching the street. The noon sun was full on the row of shops with their open-air stalls, pedestrians moving thick in both directions, fresh mountain spring water running clear in the gutters along the road, and feeding moss and small wildflowers between the stones. The wall of the building across from the inn was covered in vines that rustled when the wind moved through them. We yawned at the same time and laughed about it. She had made me lunch, she said. I thanked her for the trouble. I had decided to eat lunch in the shop today. The late supper the night before had proved that the standard innkeeper menu, kept cheap for travelers, did not actually fill a working man, and I had asked Sophia to add some meat to the regular rotation for me. Sophia's cooking was good, but even the cleverest housewife cannot cook without rice. Good ingredients were not in the budget for the kind of customer the inn usually fed, and the original Gauss could. I watched Sophia hurry back to the kitchen and yawned again. Today I planned to walk over to Widow's Alley and find the small shop shopkeeper Glon had recommended for magic items. I did not yet have the money saved for a real wand, but you can still go and ask. Maybe a pleasant surprise. At the very least I would walk out of the inn. I confirmed again that the awful taste of the cheap meals was not Sophia's fault. How is anyone supposed to cook the cheapest black bread into something tasty without seasonings and side ingredients? Maybe with a spell that made food delicious. Did such a spell exist in this world? As a mage apprentice in everyone else's eyes, the actual magical novice I was had no idea. A hot wind ran the streets in the afternoon. I kept to the edge and stayed clear of the horse and mule carts hauling cargo along the main road. Widow's Alley should be over that way. The boy whose body I had inherited had lived in Greyrock Town a year and still had not been to half its corners. This alley among them. I had only vaguely heard such a place existed. Asking my way along, I felt my way to the front of a deep, quiet alley. I stepped over the clear ditch on the side of the road and onto the stone-paved path, with row houses on both sides full of every kind of person. Artists, herbalists, small-scale craftspeople, little taverns on the ground floors, and unmentionable pleasure houses next to them. Women in light clothes and heavy makeup leaned at the doorways and waved their pale arms at passers-by. I let myself look once. Then when one of them turned her head my way, I pulled my eyes back and walked past briskly. I had real business today. Thornhouse, I muttered. Found it. Almost at the end of the alley, I came to a small house in gray-mottled moss. I had actually walked past it the first time. The moment I went by, a misfit feeling crawled across the back of my neck, like something was wrong with the picture, and I doubled back and only then saw the wooden sign nailed into the wall reading Thornhouse. Was this the right place? Looking at the dust-furred oak door with a copper bell embedded in its panel, my first thought was that the place had been abandoned for a long time. I hesitated, then knocked. The knock came back clean, a crisp wood report. No answer. I waited a few seconds and knocked again. Still nothing. Maybe they had moved. I had not stayed at Glon's Black Anvil long, but in the time I was there, shopkeeper Glon had basically never left the building. It would not be surprising if his information was outdated by years. I was already turning to leave when a long groaning creak came out of the door. The old wood pulled inward, slowly, and the rust in the hinges sounded like a small wounded animal in the back of its own throat. A grinding teeth-on-edge whine. I looked up. Behind the door was an empty pitch-black hall. Who had opened it? Then a clear female voice came from below my line of sight. She asked who had sent me. I looked down and realized someone had been standing in front of me the whole time. She was that short. Standing right at the door, I had not registered her below my chest, and only now, looking down, I saw her clearly. She had the face of a woman around 20 years old, slightly ruddy skin, a head of smooth, straight black hair. But she was honestly tiny. Was she even 80 centimeters tall? Even a goblin would have come up taller. If she walked the street, I had a flash of a tall man stepping clean over her head without noticing. Halfling or gnome? Probably a halfling. I had passed both races at distance on roads, but this was the first time I had got a close look. Halflings and gnomes are both small peoples. Halflings are nearer to a miniature human. All dimensions scaled down, but the proportions kept, and they carry themselves more nimbly. About 90 centimeters tall, between 30 and 35 pounds, small frame, ruddy skin, straight black hair. The information lined up with a small lady on the porch. She told me, deadpan, that she had a feeling I was thinking something not very polite, and then asked again who had sent me. She seemed very sure that strangers did not walk to her shop on their own. I gave her my name, told her shopkeeper Glon from the Black Anvil Workshop had pointed me here. Full name G-Long Betts, in case Glon was not enough of a tag. Glon, she said, and lifted one eyebrow. Come in first. She moved aside as she said it, though for all the room it took up she might as well not have bothered. I crossed the porch and stepped into the hall. The outside of the Thorn House was an unremarkable old door and an old wall. The hall inside was a different planet. Dozens of brass candelabras hanging from the vaulted ceiling. The walls inset with honeycomb wooden niches stacked along every face of the room. Each niche held a different item. Specimens, organs for monsters and beasts, dried herbs of unknown use, books, statues, eggs of unknown species. Too many things at once. I turned my head and tried to take in a row at a time. Then my eyes locked on a row of long, thin objects hung neatly along one wall. Wands. The wands varied in length. The shortest was about as long as the one Daphne carried, just forearm length. The longest, I estimated, was nearly 2 meters end to end, and read almost as much like a heavy melee weapon as a wand. A dark brown wooden staff with the surface cracked in fine snake-scale lines, the grip wrapped in cloth, and at the slightly bulged top an egg-shaped gemstone embedded in the head and giving off a soft green glow. The thing weighed easily over 10 pounds. An average mage without strength would struggle to swing it. Pity. They had all grown into shapes I could not afford. Whether the heavy and majestic large staffs or the slim and delicate small wands, the gemstones in their heads were obviously not cheap, at least to my untrained eye. I pulled my gaze off them. The halfling lady had already climbed onto a rattan chair and stretched out on it without paying me the courtesy of an outsider's politeness. She told me her name was Andeni, and she was the shop manager here. She asked what I was to Glon. I told her. She looked at me as if I had said something wild. Just an employee, she repeated, or someone who worked part-time for a few days. I asked what the matter was. Nothing, she said. I just did not expect that old man to have changed this much. You know, he was not a helpful good person in the past. She blinked. In fact, he killed without blinking. I was momentarily stuck. I did not say anything in reply. Glon had been good to me, and the past he had walked through with strangers was not my business. Watching me settle back to flat again so quickly, Andeni privately decided I was boring. Were Glon and I close? She asked. We're close, she said. We were members of the same squad, but we have not been in contact for many years. Both still in Grey Rock Town, and we have not crossed paths once. What a heartless man. She sighed and shook her head with her face contradicting her mouth. Indifference under the sighing. In all those years, she added, this was the first time Glon had introduced anyone to her. She asked me, eyebrow up, what brought me? Was I looking to buy a wand? She had clocked that I had spent the walk-in staring at her wand wall. I asked, carefully, what the price was. The reason I called her senior was that a halfling with a room like this was clearly no ordinary person, almost certainly a professional in some flavor. The second one from the left, she told me, the short one, is the cheapest. 20 gold coins. I sucked in a breath at the number. 20 gold coins. For a single commission like the one I had just finished, I would have to clear 280 of them before I could afford the cheapest wand on her wall, and that was before I ate or paid rent. Mages are truly noble. Even their hardware was at a noble's price. Andeni grinned. Expensive, she said. This is the cost price. Even if you put 20 gold coins on the table, I would not sell it. These are all my personal pieces and they are not for sale. She asked if there was anything else I wanted to buy or anything I wanted her to appraise. I hesitated a second, then pulled the life magic stone out from inside my collar. Senior, I asked, could you have a look at how much this life magic stone is worth? She told me to bring it closer. She could not see it from the chair, and sat up. I walked over with the stone in my hand. She leaned in and tapped it lightly with one pale finger. I felt a faint anomalous ripple in the air. came and went in the same breath, gone before I had time to study it. Common quality life magic stone, she said, with a small loss of energy. Buyback price I can offer is 2 gold coins and 40 silver coins. About the same as the figure Daphne had mentioned on the road. I asked her what I would need to budget if I wanted to commission a custom wand built around this stone. She asked if I had a base wand prepared. I told her no. Then, including testing and customization fees, she said, plus the use of this life magic stone, you still need at least 1 gold coin. I said at least, she added. The exact number depends on the price of the base material that fits you. 1 gold coin. Next to the 20 gold cliff face I had just looked down, 1 gold coin felt almost manageable. It was just the price of a house. I had about 19 silvers in savings. If every mission cleared 7 silver coins of profit and I shaved off about 2 silvers for living expenses per mission cycle, that put me at about 5 silvers banked per cycle. 16 missions or so. That was without any unexpected windfall. Real adventuring rewards were sometimes higher than this floor. I clicked my tongue. It still felt like a long stretch. Money is genuinely hard to earn. Undeni had her chin propped up on her hand, watching me count on my fingers, and the bitter expression that finally landed on my face made her laugh harder. Maybe it reminded her of when she had started out and had been just as broke. Most new adventurers were. Adventuring sounds like a good time until it becomes a job, she said. Then it starts to give you headaches. Buying and upgrading weapons and armor, maintenance costs, food, medicine, survival kit. The list of money-burning lines is long enough that some adventurers wanted to split silver and copper coins in half to use them twice. Sometimes you came back from a hard run and found the reward did not even cover the repair on your own armor and weapons. That taste was a taste she did not want to chew a second time, even now that she had saved enough to retire. I finished my math and looked back at her. Senior, I said, I want to sell this life magic stone and buy a base one that suits my mana flow. After thinking it over, the stone gathering dust around my neck was not going to do me any good in the short term. Better to convert it to cash and put a base wand in my hand. First, I could start syncing with the base now, so that later, when I had the money to upgrade it into a full wand, the sync time was already in the bank. Second, casting through a base wand, while not as good as a finished wand, was still over 10% more efficient than casting barehanded, and getting that boost in my combat power as fast as possible was the whole point. Good, Andini said. Follow me. She hopped off the rattan chair and walked barefoot toward a back room. I followed her. She pushed open a wooden door and we stepped into a space that looked closer to a warehouse, shelves on every wall stacked with materials and items. She rooted through them, pulled out a handful of wooden pieces of different lengths and held them in the crook of her arm. These are the most common base wands, she said. See which one suits you. She led me back into the main hall and laid them out on the table. How do I test? I asked. Very simple, she said. Pick one up, then try to circulate your mana through it. If you hit a block, it does not suit you. If it flows smooth, it is compatible, and the smoother the better. I crouched, took the closest dark brown piece, weighed it in my palm, crooked wood, about 1/2 meter long. I closed my eyes, settled my breathing, and slowly pushed mana out of my body and into it. The moment my mana touched the wood pushed back. I leaned harder and got the mana through the resistance. But inside the wood, the flow felt like dozens of tiny figures were fighting my mana the whole way through. I pulled the mana back and set the wood down. How was it? She asked. Not suitable, I said. She told me to try the next. I picked up the next one. After a moment, I set it back down and shook my head. Try the next. 5 or 6 in a row I went through, and at the end I set down the last one with an unmistakable expression of disappointment on my face. None of them suit, she said, and rubbed her chin. This is rare. It looks like your mana is very special. What do I do now? I asked. Let me think, she said, and closed her eyes. After a long while she opened them. I remember now, she said. I still have a few very special treasures. Are they expensive? I asked carefully, worried that even with the life magic stone on the table I would not be able to afford them. Not expensive, she said. Cheaper than these even. It is just that they do not get used in normal cases, so I put them away. Wait here. I will be right back. She did not make me wait long. Andini came back into the hall with a pile of staves in her arms. Good thing I keep old things, she said proudly with her hands on her hips. They have not gone missing in all this time. I had to look down at her to keep her in frame, even knowing she was almost certainly old enough to be my mother, possibly my grandmother. The petite frame kept reading as a mature child to my eye. What are you staring at me for? She said. Hurry up and try them. She pushed at my waist with the back of one hand to signal me into motion. I looked over the table, and these staves were noticeably different from the previous batch. The base materials much more varied. Bone, stone, green vine, and a few more wooden pieces. The wood I tested you with earlier, she said, is the most common and also the most workable for wand crafting. These are obscure base materials. The reason I call them obscure is that the mana of most spellcasters has a hard time resonating with them at all. And yet they do react to mana, so theoretically, low probability or not, there is a matching owner out there for each. Wand matching runs 2 ways. The person chooses the wand and the wand chooses the person. You cannot force either side. Your mana looks very special, she said. Maybe these oddballs suit you. Pick one and try. She did not bother introducing each piece individually. There was no need to. If one of them turned out to fit, she would introduce that one then. I picked up the green vine staff closest to me. Slender, under 30 centimeters, like the little pointer my teacher used to hold in class in my last life. Unlike the soft green vines I would have imagined, this one had been hardened, and in the hand, it felt closer to a branch. I pushed mana into it. The familiar pushback came again, but the rejection felt weaker than with the common wood. I cycled mana through it once and put it down. How was it? She asked. A little better, but still not comfortable, I told her honestly. Next, I worked through the stone staves and the other wooden staves. Mixed results. A light yellow wooden staff felt decent enough to flag as a fallback. By that point, my face had relaxed. If the last bone staff did not click, the fallback was already the answer. I picked the bone staff up. Despite the name, this base material was not eerie at all. It was finely smooth, about 40 centimeters long and 2 fingers wide. There was a joint at the midpoint, the lower half polished into a grip with a small groove at the bottom for later processing, and the upper half a slim straight rod that tapered gradually to its tip. Calling it bone undersold it. It looked more like a white jade art piece, with a faint sense of holiness and clean to the eye. Was this one really a base material I could afford? Andini had brought it out, so I might as well test it. I pushed mana slowly into the rod. The instant my mana touched it, a warm energy answered from the other side. I shuddered head to foot. A startlingly comfortable feeling settled in my chest. The bone read like a natural extension of my own body. The grip familiar in my hand the first time I held it, and inside the rod my mana flowed without the smallest obstruction. Every particle inside the rod seemed to be helping me channel. I want it. My pulse was up. Even without a Wandcraft education, I knew I had stumbled into a base material that fit me too well. What creature does this bone come from? I asked, swallowing, fighting the rising excitement off my face. To my surprise, Andeni shook her head. I do not know, she said. I picked it up many years ago on an adventure inside a cave. Just this one piece. I saw it reacted to mana and pocketed it then. Senior, I asked, you have not run an appraisal technique on it. The brief touch she had laid on my life magic stone earlier had carried a spell ripple, and I had figured it for appraisal. For a shop that traded in magical items, owning that kind of spell was not unusual. I have used appraisal technique, she said. I only got very surface level results. I cannot pin down the species it came from. In all the years since, I have not met a single spellcaster whose mana resonated with it even a little. I figured it was a treasure when I picked it up and turned out to be a brick I could not sell. Senior, I asked, will you sell this to me? I was already unwilling to put the bone staff down. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened like a goldfish's. You mean your mana is compatible with this base material, she said. Do not lie to me just because the staff looks pretty. She had only brought it out because it was sitting in the same pile, not because she expected it to work. After all the testing years, she had long since given up on it. With every spellcaster who had run mana into it, the bone had not shown the smallest obedience. What spell do you know? She asked. Mage Hand, I said. Then cast it through this bone, she said. She was curious now, too. She had been quietly cutting the asking price on this bone staff for years, and at this point did not care what it sold for anymore. If it could finally find a spellcaster owner who matched, that was a wish of hers that had been on the shelf for a long time. I nodded. The bone staff was very compatible. I was confident I could cast smooth through it on the first try. Mage Hand. The instant mana ran into the bone, that silk smooth experience came back. Too comfortable. I could not help the small intake of breath. No going back. There really is no going back. After feeling what casting through this bone felt like, I doubted I could ever endure casting barehanded again. A ripple of mana rolled out of the staff tip. The surrounding magical energy obeyed the ripple's instruction at once and converged into shape. An invisible mage hand condensed in the air in front of me at speed. It formed faster than I had ever felt it form, about half the time it normally took. The mage hand's movement speed, which I drove by waving the staff, was also about 20% faster than usual. It is actually true, Andini breathed. Then she came at me. She walked up fast on her short legs, face full of excitement, and punched me twice in the kidney with 2 small hard fists. Gauss, she said, you really are a freak. I sucked air through my teeth and rocked forward. Do not let the small fists fool you. She put real weight behind them. 2 solid thumps into my kidney, and the wind went out of me for a second. My mage hand almost dropped. Oh, sorry, she said, catching herself. She licked her lower lip, and her face went embarrassed. It is fine, I said after a few breaths to let the pain edge off. My read of her had updated though. Beyond casting, she was also that strong. It went to show why she was a professional. Even though Andini clearly was not a strength build class, her base physical condition was on a different floor than an ordinary person's. Who would have thought, she said quietly, that this bone could really find its owner? She let out a sigh with a complicated set of feelings tangled in it. She had spent years curious whether the matching master existed in the world, and now that she had found one, what landed in her was a faint loss. Senior Andini, I asked, uneasy. "What is the price on this staff?" She had told me in passing earlier it was not expensive, but the bone was simply too perfect to fit, and her face right now was unreadable. She was quiet for a beat, and then the sentimental Antony finally said it. 10 silver coins, she said. After all, I did spend a long stretch polishing and crafting it. I felt my chest unclench. The number was a feather. However, she added, the chest tightened right back up. Could she not finish a sentence in one breath? I turned my eyes back to her. Was she taking it back? My hand tightened on the staff before I noticed. However, she said with a grin, her canine tooth biting her lip, it might be quite hard for you to upgrade this bone staff into a real wand later. It could also just be that my own skill is lacking. But for many years I tried many times to turn it into a real wand, and every attempt failed. Every magical item I had on hand suitable for a wand core I tested. Not one of them succeeded. Was that all? I kept my face flat and inside let out a quiet breath. She was unpredictable. I had thought it was something urgent. For me, turning it into a real wand was a future problem. The present priority was getting it into my hand all the way. But it is not really a problem for you to use it as is for now, she said. You will have a second wand and a third wand later anyway. She glanced up at my grim face and tossed in another piece of comfort. For spellcasters, owning several wands at once is the most normal thing in the world. Every wand is like a person. Each has its own specialties and character. Fast attack, precision, burst, coordination. She waved at the row on the wall, one of which was taller than twice her height. It was hard to picture the comedy of her swinging that one. Understood, I said. Senior, should I pay now? It was only 10 silver coins. I had enough cash on me to pay. She shook her head and stopped teasing me. Fine, look at you in a rush. She held out her small pale palm. I counted out 10 silver coins from my pouch and laid them on it. The moment the silver touched her hand, the silver was gone. Some kind of storage magic, or the storage space conceit out of the fantasy books of my last life. Andony did not feel like explaining, and I did not ask. I stayed in the Thorn House a while longer. Andony had a list of pointers she wanted to push my way, and before I left she lent me one of her early magical notebooks. Maybe out of respect for Glon, maybe out of respect for the bone staff finally finding its owner. I stepped out of the Thorn House at dusk. The oak door pulled itself closed behind me in the gold light. For a beat I felt as if I had stepped out of one world into a different one. The Thorn House's presence on the alley seemed to fade behind me, slowly blending back into the line of plain houses until it became the most inconspicuous building on the row. What kind of magic? I watched a moment longer, then pulled my eyes away. Bone staff in hand, I walked out of the alley with my step lighter than it had been. The trip had earned me a lot. A borrowed notebook of basic magical theory from Andeny, and a base wand that fit me too well for only 10 silver coins. The life magic stone had not even been sold in the end. Andony told me not to sell it yet if I was not pressed for money, that wearing a life magic stone for a long time had quiet benefits for the body, minimal in any one day but compounding over time. Over the next several days, the Night Owl squad had no jobs lined up, same as most squads after finishing a mission. I do not know how the others spent their days. Mine were dense. The bell woke me up. I ate. I carried the bone staff out to the open ground beyond the town gate. I drilled magic. I read. I drilled sword work. I came back to town to rest. I did the same the next day. Owning the staff put me back into the enthusiasm of the first time I had cast a spell. The drill content was Magic Missile. After the most recent commission, my proficiency on Magic Missile had reached level 2. 3 out of 20. After acquiring the staff and dropping into deep practice, the proficiency climbed fast again, rising from level 2 3 of 20 to level 2 6 of 20. The staff's bonus, the rising proficiency, and my mana reserves climbing slowly but steadily had pushed my combat output well past where it had been. My mana was at 1.65 standard units. The compression ratio for a single magic missile had come down from 60% to 50%. That meant I could now fire 3 micro-magic missile attacks in a single window without sliding into the mana-empty weakened state. On top of that, the bone staff sped up the cast and gave the spell a small power boost. A staff-channeled magic missile at 50% power now hit with the destructive force of a bare-handed magic missile at 70% power. In short, my combat power had taken another step up the ladder. In a head-to-head against the me of a few days ago, I would have won clean, since faster cast meant the right to act first. When the opponent has not even finished his attack, your spell is already breaking on his face. The advantage explains itself. Cast speed is sometimes more important than raw spell power. The principle that speed is the only path to invincibility holds for spellcasters too. By my count, the gathering for the next commission was almost due. The drill stretch had my hands itchy. I was already impatient to step into a job and test the upgrade in live fire. By the way, next time I saw Levin, I would suggest the squad take on a non-goblin combat job. With the improved strength, I had more confidence to walk new ground. Time to put a few entries other than greenskins into the monster compendium on the Adventurer's Handbook. Under the flag with the sword, the shield, and the staff snapping in the wind, after a long stretch of rest days, the Night Owl squad gathered again. Compared to the wreck state we had walked into Grey Rock Town in last time, everyone looked sharp now. Days of rest had done their work on body and mind. "Morning, Gauss," Doyle called out, freshly haircut, waving with the energy of a man who had slept well. "Morning," I told him back. Doyle did not talk much at first meet, and I had read him as reticent, but the more we got familiar, the more it showed he was something of a closet extrovert. Warm once you were inside the line. It also helped that my output had earned his approval. "What is that?" the sharp-eyed Doyle asked, immediately spotting the white staff tucked at my waist. "Is that a magic wand?" The others turned at his question and looked at the slender white staff hanging at my hip. "Not a magic wand," I told them, dismissive, "just a base with no core. Not worth much." They did not fully believe me, but the bone staff was simply too well shaped to look ordinary. Even Daphne looked down at the wooden staff in her own hand, held it up next to mine and pursed her lips. She had liked her wooden staff before today and was suddenly finding it duller than she remembered. What material was that staff anyway? Gemstone. Stone. She kept feeling the texture did not match the usual wood for a magic wand. "All right," Levin said. "Let us go pick up a mission." He led us into the Adventurers Guild hall. The hall was packed as usual. The wash of voices hit us as soon as we crossed the porch. Do not expect low-level adventurers to keep their voices down in public, especially the big hairy half-orcs whose default register sounded like they were afraid the strangers 2 streets over were not getting the message clearly. "Levin," I said, raising my voice to clear the noise, "let us take on a different kind of mission this time." "Different how?" he asked. "Combat that is not against goblins," I told him. "I wanted to fight a wider mix of monsters and earn experience against different builds." "Understood," he said with a serious nod. "I will try." My strength had earned his attention, so he was going to take the request seriously, and it was a small ask. The low-level monsters adventurers handled were not limited to goblins. Goblins were just the densest population. Outside goblins there were skeletons in graveyards, kobolds in mines, drowners crawling along riverbeds, slime hiding in swamp puddles. Each of them had the same potential to threaten human life and property, and each had its own commissions on the board. I was not the lead. After making the suggestion, I let it go and let Levin pick. I let my mind drop into the monster compendium on the Adventurer's Handbook. The compendium had 6 pages. I could only open page 1, Common Monsters, and on the first page only one icon was still lit, an ugly green-skinned monster with a small 23 in its lower right corner. The other icons sat under gray mist, so I could not even count how many common monster types there were. At the bottom of the page, a single line of text recorded my progress. Common collected types 1, cumulative count, 23 of 50. The line tracked monster types I had killed, and the total kill count. Since I had only ever killed goblins, the goblin total and the overall total matched. By the time I came back to the room, the squad had clustered around Levin and were settling on a specific job. The chosen scroll was for Valencia Village. Find and eliminate the slime wandering outside the harvest orchard. 60 copper coins per slime, mission quantity 20 or more. They also picked up a long-term collection commission for slime gel. Buyback at 30 copper coins per piece. A common slime had less raw combat output than a goblin, but slime were a more timid build, and finding their tracks was harder. They were not toothless either. The acidic content of their bodies had a real corrosive edge. On balance, a mild job. Location was not far either. Valencia Village, judging by the map distance, was about half a day's walk. We agreed and went. At noon, gear and pack sorted, we were back at the town gate setting out on the road. With the shorter distance, the pack horse cart carried less, and whoever needed to rest on it had more room to actually rest. When my turn came around to ride, I did not waste it. I pulled the notebook out from inside my coat. With the cart rocking gently under me and my pack as a pillow, I read. I had been working through Andini's old notebook in spare moments. There were no spell tutorials in it, but the pages were full of her personal reflections on magic and mana, along with bits of magical lore she had collected on early adventures. As a man who had never encountered or could have encountered supernatural anything in his last life, the notebook was a friendly door into a body of common knowledge I did not yet have. The pieces I weighed heaviest were the introductions to common 0-level cantrips and low-level spell effects. I also figured out that the appraisal technique Andani had cast on the Life Magic Stone was a first-level spell. Its effect was that, by maintaining physical contact with an object and casting the spell, if the object was a magical item or carried mana, the caster could in most cases learn the object's properties. I had not expected such an unassuming-looking spell to sit at first-level rank. Then again, the effect was that good.